Hello everyone. If you are new to my channel, then consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do it, thanks. By the way, I also have a Luffy fan fiction channel. If you are interested, the link is in the description. Dragonslayer by KitsuneDragon. He said he saw great potential in my small body and he raised me. Because of him I lived, I learned, and I finally found someone I could call friend, even if he didn't call me the same. I am his son. I am his student, the Dragonslayer of Acnologia. I don't own anything. Adios.
Black Desert, Outer Realm, year X784. Namikaze and Uzumaki flew through the air, nearing the floating castle where the phantom dragon, Morpheus, resided. Explain this to me. Namikaze spoke, gaining Uzumaki's attention. The Jinchuriki looked to the older son of Acnologia with a raised eyebrow. Yes, that red energy you generated, it is demonic in origin obviously, but I have come across demonic energy before. However, this was only in the form of magic. Your demonic energy is far different. It is much more concentrated and gives one the feeling that it is actually alive. If we are going to work together to try and escape from this outer realm, I believe is what you called it. Yes, the outer realm. It has other names like the Phantom Zone and Distortion World, but the outer realm is its most common name. Uzumaki replied. Namikaze nodded. Understood. So yes, in order to escape from this outer realm and defeat Morpheus, in order to force him to release us from this place, I will need to take into account your demonic energy, and in order to create an appropriate battle strategy, I will need you to explain to me in detail about it. Uzumaki frowned as he thought through the idea of explaining the concept of chakra and yukai to his older self. Kurama, he has a point with you needing to work with him, and in order to do that, he will need to understand the concept of chakra usage. Besides, you all are from separate dimensions. Even if you explain to him about me, there will be no way for him to replicate chakra in any shape or form, as his system is most likely completely used to using magic energy. Uzumaki nodded as he registered the Kyuubi no Yoko's words. The shorter blonde shifted his wings so that he now faced Namikaze. Very well. The red energy I am capable of generating is a form of energy known as chakra. Chakra? In my world, chakra is merely something that ancient priests and monks used to believe in as a way to try and gain enlightenment of both body and mind through meditative practices. Is it the same? Not exactly. You see, the chakra that I refer to is something found in the bodies of all living things. It is an internal energy source that is brought to the surface as a fusion of the physical energy that resides within the cells of the body and the spiritual energies that can be generated from meditative practices. The red chakra that I produce is the result of my having a demonic entity sealed within me, and so I am labeled as a jinchuriki, the power of human sacrifice. Uzumaki patted his abdominal area lightly. Due to it being sealed into me, I am capable of utilizing its power, and I can either use it for augmentative purposes, strengthening my attacks, or I can use it for defense, since it is possible for me to form a cloak around me made up of the demonic energy. You with me so far? Namikaze nodded. Uzumaki then continued his explanation. From my Earthland's other parallel dimension, a place known as the Elemental Nations, the demonic chakra is found only in 9 powerful creatures known as the Biju. The Biju are placed in a hierarchy of power based on the number of tails they possess. And the number of tails goes up from 1 through 9? Namikaze asked. Uzumaki replied with a curt nod. However, before he could continue his explanation, Namikaze's eyes widened as a look of realization came upon him. These Biju. The one with 9 tails. It wouldn't happen to be demonic Kitsune, would it? Uzumaki's eyes widened along with his inner Bijus. Yes, but how could you possibly know that? In my world, I have an Exceed partner. He is one of 9 unique Exceed capable of shifting their forms into that of giant demonic beasts. His demon form is that of a Kitsune and can use up to 9 tails of power. So I'm guessing from this parallel dimension theory that since I have a 9-tailed Kitsune by the name of Kurama, your Biju is Kurama? Uzumaki's eyes were wide with shock. An Exceed? You mean like happy? Namikaze snarled. Do not disrespect my partner, boy. Kurama is far above being compared to a weak little feline like that of the one who belongs to the son of Igneal. His power is capable of rivaling that of mine and Two Sands. I like this Naruto better than you. Even if I am an Exceed in his universe, he still holds respect towards me and holds me in high regard. I disown you as my Jinchuriki, you hairless monkey. Kurama said. Shut up, you stupid fluff ball. Anyway, in conclusion, the red chakra that I produce is from the Biju, Kurama, sealed within me. A process which is done through a branch of ninjutsu, the title given to techniques that most shinobi use, known as fuinjutsu, which focuses entirely upon sealing methods. The power is virtually limitless, but it comes at the price. And what is this price? Kurama's chakra heals me, giving me a healing factor. However, if used in the form of the cloak, the potency of the energy results in it burning my body. Then that would mean your body is constantly breaking down and healing itself. That process could very well shorten your lifespan, Namikaze said. Yes, so you see, I rarely use Kurama's power unless absolutely necessary. My magical abilities alone are more than enough to handle my opponents, and even if I don't use Kurama's chakra, Agnologia's magic is more than enough to crush anyone that stands in my way. Uzumaki clenched his fist tightly as a way to emphasize his point. Namikaze remained silent as his mind raced through numerous battle scenarios regarding his other self's usage of the Kyuubi's chakra. However, he frowned when his mental simulations came to stop when he thought of his temporary partner freezing up or becoming weakened as a result. Namikaze shook his head, bringing himself out of his thoughts when he saw the gargantuan shadow which encompassed both him and Uzumaki. Insert music. Insert music. Naruto Orochimaru's theme. The two sons of Agnologia hovered in front of the massive castle. In contrast to the desolate wasteland, the castle lay in the midst of a few large grassy hills and plains. The castle's architecture was very remarkable, with its towers' tops resembling an interesting isosceles triangle and a noticeable monster with horns on the center of the castle. Two smaller parts of the castle, which lay on floating islands, were joined to the main structure. The castle itself was constructed out of a dark brown stone. The windows of the castle appeared as if they were made of gold as the lights within it shone through the glass and illuminated the castle's interior. The tops of the castle structure were made of aqua-colored stone and had golden stripes decorating them. Namikaze and Uzumaki flew forth before landing on the soft, green grass of the plains and strolled up the cobblestone pathway that led to the massive castle, when they finally reached the doors. Below the horned monster that decorated the center of the massive architectural marvel, lay the large double doors that served as the entrance into the castle. The doors were at least 20 times their size, large enough for a dragon to fit through them. The doors were a light shade of brown and were outlined with royal blue. Each door had a similar pattern on it. A golden sword was emblazoned above a giant golden loop handle to act as a knocker on either door. Another golden pattern adorned the doors below the knockers. Agnology had told me of Morpheus, and despite his pride and unimaginable power, Morpheus is a very cautious and troublesome dragon who goes to great lengths in order to assure his own safety. Uzumaki frowned as his senses picked up on nothing. There are no visible traps and I don't smell or hear anything out of the ordinary. Namikaze didn't respond as he walked up to the doors and held up his fist. He looked at the solid surface once more before rearing back his fist and thrusting it forth with amazing speed and strength. A furious gust of wind rushed forth from the impact, and the loud crash that resounded through the air was nothing short of deafening, and Uzumaki Griptai's hearing was affected. Namikaze scowled as he removed his fist from the door. Not even a dent formed from the impact. However, as the older of the two Narutos watched the entrance to the massive castle, he saw what looked like a flicker of something. Mokashiryu no Byakugan. Namikaze's eyes flickered from blue to shining white. The eyes of his draconian father granted him the vision to see what could not be seen. The world around him was the same, but surrounding the mighty stone castle, Namikaze now saw a dome of magic energy coating the castle's exterior. There's a barrier. It's very thin, but there is a barrier covering the door, Namikaze informed Uzumaki as he turned around. Uzumaki's eyes narrowed, his blue eyes now gaining a calculating look within them. Thin, yet strong. He wants us to break through obviously, but he wants to test us as well. Brute strength won't break those windows either, as I assume they're also covered by this barrier. That would be the obvious assumption. We could very well eat the magic of the barrier, but it is unknown as to whether or not the barrier's source is Morpheus himself. Either way, we aren't getting in unless we break it down. Namikaze tapped his chin in thought before glancing back at his compatriot. Wait. Rune magic may not have a wider range of techniques, but my seal magic does. Uzumaki looked on as he watched his older self make a few hand motions, and suddenly, a pocket dimension opened up before him. The physically 20-year-old drew out his magic pen and immediately began to draw numerous kanji along the ground. Oi, brat! Namikaze called out to Uzumaki, catching the younger Naruto's attention, albeit he was annoyed at being called brat. What, old man? Uzumaki bit back with a smirk as he watched the vein that pulsed on Namikaze's forehead at being called old. Don't sit around there while I do all the work. You know rune magic, correct? Uzumaki nodded. Then apply some link runes at the corners of the door and then place 2 on every single tower of the castle. Finally, apply 6 more in a hexagonal shape surrounding those 2 knockers on the door. Uzumaki nodded and did as he was told. From the fact that his older self was capable of utilizing the Amaterasu seal formulas, it was obvious just how advanced in the use of seals and runes Namikaze was. Once he applied the link runes, Namikaze wrote a string of kanji and connected the seals and runes together. He then stood in front of the complex seal rune formula hybrid and then formed numerous hand motions, swiping the air with his magic pen before clapping his hands together. Suddenly the hexagonal-shaped seal formula glowed and a large violet magic seal appeared on the front of the door. Uzumaki watched in amazement as the seal formula bore the image of a large white heart that shone like the crimson moon in the sky. In the center of the heart lay the image of what looked like a sword of some kind. Its hilt was made up of two intersecting keys, their teeth facing outwards and away from each other. It had a pale green filigree and the blade itself was of a bronze color. The seal then pulsed and suddenly a large string of kanji raced around the massive castle, encompassing the now visible barrier of magic energy in a matter of seconds. The heart in the center of the seal then pulsed once more and suddenly arc of violet electricity ran along the length of the kanji chains, a pillar of magic forming at each location where Uzumaki had placed a link rune. The barrier then shattered apart. Impressive, Uzumaki stated. I admit, you are a superior when it comes to this field of magic. Speaking of which, what spell was that? It's one of the most complex barrier-breaking seals known as seal magic, Kai Blade. It acts as a master key, unlocking the weak points in any magic-based barrier and then shattering the barrier. The link runes I had you use were to act as areas where the magic would disperse and carry the magic energy along to other link points as they simultaneously scanned the barrier for its weak points. My, aren't you a smart one? Both Narutos glanced upwards as they looked up to see the horned monster that was carved into the castle's center. The image of the monster suddenly shifted, its eyes gazing down at them and the lights shifted from golden yellow to bloody crimson. So you broke through the barrier to enter the castle. Well done. I applaud you, young Dragonslayers. As reward for breaking through the barrier, I welcome you both into my humble abode. I feel so honored. Namikaze rolled his eyes. The doors suddenly groaned and creaked, scraping along the ground as they opened outwards. Namikaze and Uzumaki didn't even spare a glance at each other before they walked between the space made by the parted doors. Namikaze and Uzumaki glanced around. The castle's interior was pure white. Small pedestals and statues of dragons all made of white marble lay on the pure white floor. The high ceiling of the castle was supported by intricate curved arches. The doors creaked as they began to close behind them and Morpheus laughed darkly. Welcome to Castle Oblivion. Insert music, Kingdom Hearts Castle Oblivion theme. The doors slammed shut and both blondes knew there would no leaving this place, not without a fight that is. Quite an impressive castle. Despite its lack of interior design, I must say I wouldn't mind making my home in a place like this. Uzumaki said, more to himself than Namikaze. I concur. Though what puzzles me is why this floating rock formation where Castle Oblivion is settled, is the only one that bears any form of foliage. Morpheus was once the dragon of dreams before he became capable of manipulating the darkness of the subconscious mind, which resulted in his turning to the dark side and leading him to become a controller of nightmares. It is possible that Castle Oblivion was his dream during the time he tried to take over the mantle of Dragon King and usurp said king. Uzumaki explained. The dragon statues laying around the halls do make that hypothesis likely. Namikaze added as he looked at the dragon statues. The two Narutos continued to walk through the hallways of the massive castle. After turning to the left, they came to a plain white door. Opening the door, Uzumaki glanced around and spotted 4 dragon statues standing in each corner of the room. Another door lay directly opposite from the door the two blondes entered through. Uzumaki walked across to go open it. The taller blonde admired the detailed carvings of the dragon statue only for a flash of red to suddenly appear in the statue's eyes. Namikaze immediately leapt back when the statue's claws swiped at him, aiming to have the Dragonslayer shed blood. Brat! Namikaze turned to see Uzumaki was in a similar situation as another dragon statue came to life. The 4 gargantuan beasts of white marble stared down at their prey and growled. Uzumaki and Namikaze leapt out of the way as their draconian opponents snapped their jaws in an effort to crush them between their marble fangs. The two Narutos stood back to back as the 2 dragons blocked their exits from the room. Oh, for the love of. This is too easy, Uzumaki muttered. I agree with you. There are too many openings for us to take, Namikaze said. Uzumaki leapt at his 2 dragon statues and his fists became wrapped in magic energy and wind as Namikaze did the same, only his legs were encased within the swirling winds. Fujin no Saiken. The divine fists of the wind god came crashing down upon the 2 marble dragons and Uzumaki's opponents soon had their heads and torsos, basically their entire upper bodies, reduced to rubble. Namikaze took a step and suddenly vanished into the wind. His 2 reptilian opponents glanced around, but suddenly felt a sharp impact crash into both of their bodies. Senpu Kyaku, Uzumaki ducked as Namikaze sent both of his dragons soaring through the air from the cyclone kick spell he used. The 2 Dragosin crashed into Uzumaki's already destroyed opponents. The momentum kept the state door used to be was now a giant hole with white marble dragon parts laying everywhere. The 2 Dragonslayers walked forward, kicking aside the marble remains of the dragon statues only to find themselves in complete blackness. They wandered through the darkness, using nothing but their hearing and sense of smell to navigate through the area. Suddenly, a soft blue glow filled the darkness. The 2 Narutos squinted as the glow was actually extremely bright in contrast to the darkness from before and it assaulted their eyes, But once their pupils regulated to the proper size to allow for suitable levels of light penetration, they looked around to find that room wasn't all that bright anymore. The two blondes then watched as the blue glow materialized in the form of numerous steps that spiraled upwards. The spiral staircase of transparent steps hovered in the void of blackness, reaching high up towards the top of whatever lay there. It's an obvious trap, old man. I know that, brat, but we have nowhere else to go but up. The staircase is too much of an unknown element. Though Morpheus wants us alive for some apparent reason, he has a sick sense of humor in watching us bypass his traps from how he sent those 4 dragon statues after us. It would be best if we just fly up. Uzumaki twitched his back muscles and in a flash of black, his leathery wings came into view. Namikaze merely nodded before channeling wind to the bottom of his boots where they swirled to form miniature tornadoes too small for the naked eye to see. With Fudon, Tobu active and Uzumaki's wings poised for takeoff, the two blonde Dragonslayers nodded to each other and bent down on one knee. As juvenile as this may sound, I had once raced with my ally, Wind Dragon. She was the first to put my flight speed to the test, and so I was wondering if you are capable of doing the same. Are you up to the challenge, brat? Namikaze said. Uzumaki raised an eyebrow in confusion. Are you suggesting that we partake in a competition with regards to who will be capable of reaching what lies at the top of the staircase first? Pardon my disbelief, but I highly doubt you are the type for racing, old man. Namikaze sighed as he watched his younger doppelganger. Insolent brat. And with that, Namikaze suddenly took off, a sonic boom and crack in the floor being all that remained of his former presence. Uzumaki's eyes widened when he saw Namikaze was already quite far ahead. Bitch. Uzumaki flapped his wings and with a sonic boom, he too took to the air. Uzumaki flapped his wings heavily, easily gaining the upward thrust that couldn't be given to Namikaze due to his cyclone-based flight ability. Do you have no honor or pride, old man? You cheated. Cheating is what losers say, brat. Namikaze laughed darkly. He channeled a bit more magic into the air currents beneath his feet and gained a boost in speed, but Uzumaki merely flapped his wings that much harder. The two Narutos kept pace with each other until Namikaze's ears twitched. Dive, was his command. Both blondes immediately dove downwards and stared at their previous location. 2 of the stairs had moved from their locations and had headed for them, but due to them dodging, the 2 stairs had crashed into each other and shattered into mere ether nanoparticles. I guess your prediction was right involving Morpheus's sick, twisted pleasure in seeing his struggle through traps, Namikaze pointed out with a scowl. So it seems, quickly, we must make it to the top before Morpheus can bash our skulls in with these stairs. The 2 blondes rocketed skywards. Namikaze went into a barrel roll and released a number of wind blades that sliced into the stairpieces that tried to make contact with him before diving and going to the side to avoid a number of them which had decided to succumb to gravity. As that happened, Uzumaki was now caught in the storm of falling stairs. The younger Naruto weaved through the thin spaces between the stairs that fell towards him before flapping his wings and sending a powerful gust of magic-infused air that scattered the rain of transparent stairs. With an exit now in his sights, Uzumaki burst through it and glanced back down to watch the stairs vanish into the darkness below. Oi, old man, you there? Namikaze blurred next to the younger Dragonslayer. Brat, I'll crush your skull if you don't stop calling me old. Only if you stop calling me a brat. The truth hurts, doesn't it? Just shut up and fly. The 2 Narutos weaved through the stairs that came from all directions, even being forced to use magic at some points to escape when the objects that aimed to damage them became increasingly large in terms of numbers. As they continued to weave through the flying objects of solid magic, a large, glowing blue ceiling made entirely of the same solid magic material as the stairs obstructed their path. Namikaze and Uzumaki then snarled at the obstruction. Acting as if they had been doing this all their lives, Namikaze and Uzumaki avoided more of the falling steps before Namikaze decided to stop flying and use the steps as a form of solid ground. The older Dragonslayer leapt from stair to stair and then with one large push of his powerful leg muscles, Namikaze soared above Uzumaki's airborne form. Uzumaki then stretched out his hand and Namikaze grasped it tightly. The older Dragonslayer spun at a rapid pace before using the momentum gained to throw Uzumaki. The younger Dragonslayer took off like a bullet and extended his legs upwards. Out of the way, the younger blonde roared. His heel made a powerful impact with the ceiling of magic, and due to the speed and force with which he collided, the ceiling of magic stood no chance against the ferocious power of Uzumaki's kick. The ceiling shattered apart in the center, which left a large jagged hole in it. However, as Uzumaki admired his handiwork, he glanced up and grunted as he felt a flying stair impact with his forehead. Uzumaki lost his momentum and began to fall. A sonic boom resounded throughout the staircase's void and Namikaze raced through the hole as well and flew next to his doppelganger, snatching him up. Keep your focus. You are a Dragonslayer and you are strong, but you must keep your eyes on your opponent, even if that opponent is a formerly inanimate object. Namikaze's stare of ridicule bored into the young blonde's eyes. Uzumaki scowled as namikaze released him from his grasp. Uzumaki then regained his momentum as he flapped his wings and kept pace with his older doppelganger. With a final burst of wind and a mighty flap respectively, namikaze and Uzumaki reached the top of the staircase and exited through the shining white light that awaited them. Both blondes simultaneously front-flipped and landed in crouches before rising and glancing back down at the hole. They glanced at each other and smirked. "Not bad for a brat. Looks like arthritis isn't getting to you just yet, old man." The two Dragonslayers then glanced around to find themselves in another white room. The room was much larger than the one with the dragon statues. The ceiling was supported by 4 large columns on the left and right sides of the room. Between each column was a small pedestal, each having a small glass orb balancing atop it. In the center of the room was a larger glass orb that was placed atop a larger pedestal of some sort. In the front of them were 4 rectangular windows, but it was obvious there was nothing to look at through them since there seemed to be nothing but an expanse of white at first glance. And finally, to complete the room, a single white chair sat near the center glass orb. Namikaze and Uzumaki glanced around with serious looks on their faces. Uzumaki sniffed the air and raised a curious eyebrow. "That's strange. There's no scent. Our scents are the only ones present." Namikaze sniffed the air as well and his eyes narrowed. He then looked at the glass orb which lay in the center of the room. The invisible source of light that came from the windows had its rays refracted through the sphero that was cast extended quite a short distance. Curious, Namikaze walked towards the object and stared into it, watching his distorted reflection with mild fascination. Suddenly, he saw his reflection gain an even more twisted shape, as if it were moving by itself. Namikaze's eyes widened when he saw the images of his biological parents staring back at him. He took a surprised step back and the sound alerted Uzumaki. The younger blonde looked to his doppelganger and saw that he seemed to be distracted by the glass orb, but then saw the shadow of the glass orb's pedestal bend and twist, taking a life of its own. Insert music. Naruto Shippuden Night Attack. "Look out!" Uzumaki sped forth, slicing through the shadow. Namikaze's wide eyes as he saw Uzumaki standing in front of him with his claws bearing remnants of what looked like pure shadow on them. Namikaze followed his doppelganger's path of motion and his eyes came to rest on the living shadow that stood before them. The shadow then morphed and twisted, splitting apart into 2. The shadow clones of Namikaze and Uzumaki had returned. "Sons of Acknowledgia, you have done well to avoid the stair room trap and the dragon statues. I knew I picked right when I chose you both to be my sources of power." "Sources of power?" the two Dragonslayers questioned. Morpheus's voice echoed through the shadow clones as they spoke simultaneously. "Yes, and now for my final trap. Those 2 previous traps were merely for my enjoyment. After all, I am a dragon, the ultimate predator, and so I tend to play a bit with my food before I strike. Now this final trap is the one which will be used to aid in my freedom. Go, my shadow minions." Suddenly, the shadows around the room burst to life. Numerous being made entirely of shadows stared at them with their glowing yellow eyes. The minions hissed, baring the sharp teeth that lay within their jaws. Drool dripped on the white-tiled floor and the shadow beings tensed their legs. With a roar, the minions leapt at their prey. "Futon! Atsugai!" Namikaze muttered. A large amount of wind accumulated above his head and then he moved his hands downward as if he were slamming them down. The air pressure resting above both Narutos complied with its user's action and a large amount of shadow minions were now reduced to nothing but makeshift ink splatters as the winds crushed their bodies. Uzumaki then rushed forth and grabbed one of the minions that aimed to bite his face off. He tore through its neck with his claws before kicking its dead body into another minion, knocking it to the ground. A minion leapt on his back, but the younger Dragonslayer gripped it by the arm and threw it over his shoulder before stamping down on its head. With the head crushed, Uzumaki picked up the quickly disintegrating body and slapped it against the side of the face of another. With its head twisted to the side, Uzumaki wasted no time going with the flow of his motion to crash a powerful roundhouse kick to the shadow being's body. However, before the shadow being could even be sent flying, Uzumaki reached out and grabbed the body, spinning around rapidly and knocked back a numerous amount of shadow beings that tried to dogpile him. After he finished spinning, Uzumaki slammed his captive into the ground, cracking the white floor from the impact. Uzumaki then went into a handstand and bent his arms before pushing himself skyward. The young blonde went into a front flip and slammed an axe kick down upon one shadow minion's skull, splattering the inky substance that made its body every which way. 2 shadow beings leapt from either side and Uzumaki lashed out and gripped them by their faces and then squeezed tightly. With their heads crushed, he threw away the bodies before punching another shadow in the stomach area. He rotated his body and crashed an elbow into its side and then kicked it away. 5 shadow beings surrounded him and Uzumaki went into a handstand and spun on his hands. His legs spun like they were windmill blades, sending the shadow minion of Morpheus back with each kick to the head they received. Uzumaki then bent his arms, pushing himself into the air and grabbed the shadow being that tried to take a bite at him with its sharp teeth. Uzumaki gripped its jaws, holding it off before twisting and throwing it towards the ground before slamming down atop of it. Fujin no Tatsumaki. Uzumaki's leg tore through the creature's back and crashed into the tiled floor and formed a spiderweb of crack. A mighty tornado swirled to life with Uzumaki's location acting as the epicenter of the tornado. The force of the powerful wind circulation system sucked in many a shadow minion being swept into its depths before the tornado expanded and burst apart. A mighty shockwave resulted that sent many of the surrounding shadow beings skidding backwards while a few of the closer ones were airborne. The ones that were airborne suddenly found their bodies sliced into many pieces. The ink-like substance fell to the ground as the parts of the shadow beings reverted to the makeshift liquid form. Shadow beings roared only for their throats to be torn out and their bodies began to fall apart as an invisible force sliced through them. When the last of the shadow creatures being annihilated, Uzumaki looked to see Namikaze appeared out of nowhere, standing atop the final shadow being that fell, his arms coated with sharp winds in the shape of blades. Futon. Mugan no Inatsusha. With the shadow minions vanquished, both Dragonslayers of Agnologia turned to face their shadow clones were now grinning toothily at them. Their shining red eyes staring into their own blue ones. Such an amazing show of strength by both of you. However, now that I've had you distracted enough, I think it's time I sap your energy and use it to escape from here. With my freedom I will finally have my revenge on that accursed Dragon King. Morpheus chuckled through the mouths of the shadow clones. Let me show you the power of the Dragon of Phantasms. Insert music. Shingeki no Kyojin XLTT. The shadow clones took off towards the originals. Shadow Namikaze ran behind Shadow Uzumaki before leaping off the shorter shadow's back and brought down a heavy axe kick on Namikaze's head, while Shadow Uzumaki went for an uppercut to the chin of his original. Too slow, was the simultaneous comment made by both blondes as they glared at their copies. Namikaze raised his leg and diverted the uppercut before swinging his raised leg in a circle as a way to build momentum before slamming it down on Shadow Uzumaki's skull. Uzumaki grabbed the assaulting leg of Shadow Namikaze, twisting it sharply so that the foot was now bent at an unnatural angle before swinging the larger shadow clone down. A loud crash echoed through the white room as Shadow Namikaze slammed into Shadow Uzumaki with terrific force. A small spiderweb of cracks extended from the area where the two clones made contact with the ground. As the two shadow clones quickly rose to their feet they performed simultaneous windmill kicks, but Uzumaki ducked underneath the kicks as Namikaze vanished from view in a swirl of wind. Their crimson eyes widened as they saw Uzumaki already prepared for their recovery. The young Dragonslayer grabbed their outstretched legs and held them in place by squeezing them beneath his armpits. The two shadow clones tried to free themselves, but to no avail as Uzumaki's grip held strong. You probably aren't used to hand-to-hand combat, especially a form of combat that is most frequently used with human anatomy taken into account. A snarl came upon his face as Uzumaki's eyes flickered from blue to crimson. Since you aren't one to associate yourself with this sort of fighting, Morpheus. Let me show you how it's done. He pulled them towards him and then reared back both fists as the two clones stumbled forwards. Two punches crashed into each clone's body. The shadow clone skidded backwards. Shadow Namikaze stamped his foot down to provide himself with friction and stop his motion only for Uzumaki to appear above arms and block the axe kick and watched as Uzumaki used the opposite acting force as a way to backflip out of the way of Shadow Uzumaki's swipe. Uzumaki smirked as he glanced beyond the position of the two shadow clones. He then inhaled deeply as wind and magic swirled into his open mouth. Fujin no Dougo, he roared. The mighty twister rocketed from the blonde's jaws and crashed into both shadow-composed replicas. Shadow Namikaze and Shadow Uzumaki tumbled through the air, however just before they reached the wall at the end of the room, a shadow covered their bodies. Namikaze had been waiting for them as he used his levitation abilities to hang onto the ceiling above. When he saw the approaching shadow clones, he pushed off from his position with enough force to crack the durable ceiling. He held out his outstretched hands and magic energy swirled to life forming a pair of compact spheres. Energy make. Double Rasengan. The shadow clones of Morpheus released simultaneous cries of pain as the pure magic energy orbs tore apart their beings. A small explosion of magic energy occurred and the dome of blue died down to reveal Namikaze standing in the crater produced by the force of his attacks. However, Uzumaki and Namikaze were now glancing around frantically as they saw that their shadow doppelgangers were not present in the crater. They must have used the smoke from his attack's explosion to find an opportunity to escape, Uzumaki thought. His ears then twitched and the shorter blonde's superb hearing saved him from being kicked in the head as the wind generated from his shadow clone's spin kick passed over his head. The shadow clone's leg suddenly twisted in midair as if it were made of rubber and Uzumaki quickly went into a forward roll as crack in the floor formed at his previous location. The shadow Uzumaki grinned, its crimson eyes shining with an evil light that only the Dragon of Phantasms could produce. Shadow Uzumaki sped forth towards his original and went for a punch to the head which Uzumaki tilted his head to avoid, However, his eyes widened when the shadow limb turned in mid-air and extended, coiling itself around the blonde's neck. Shadow Uzumaki grinned toothily before slamming his namesake into the ground repeatedly. He then spun and slammed him into a column and then the ceiling before flinging him across the room. Just as Uzumaki was thrown, Namikaze had been caught off guard by the same extendable limb maneuver his shadow clone had performed. The powerful double punch to the gut had the older blonde soaring through the air, and suddenly his motion came to a stop as he slammed into Uzumaki. The two blondes fell to the ground and nursed their throbbing skulls. "Damn old man, do you have iron in your bones or something?" "My bone density is said to be impressive, yes, but I should be asking you that same question." The two blondes then sensed the movement of an object approaching them as their enhanced hearing caught the sound of air being pushed aside by said object. The two blondes lay flat on the ground and looked up to see the two extendable arms of their shadow clones, the two ebony fists slamming against each other with enough force to generate a shockwave. Reacting quickly, the two Dragonslayers grabbed the arms and directed them towards their mouths and bit off the shadow limbs, consuming the magic energy of the shadow beings. The shadow clones then felt as if they were being pulled into a vacuum. Digging their heels into the ground, they tried to stop their movement, but failed as the consumption process continued. The two clones glanced at each other and nodded simultaneously before converting the arms that weren't caught in the blondes' mouths into blades. With a grunt of effort, the two brought their respective shadow swords down and severed their arms from their bodies. They then watched as the arms flew into the mouths of both Narutos. The two blondes rose to their feet and shifted into fighting positions once more. "If this the best that you can fight, more payas." Namikaze gave a frown. "Then I am sorely disappointed. I expected the power of a dragon to be much greater than the amount that you are currently displaying. Acknowledgia showed me the power of a true dragon, but it appears that you are not capable of matching it. Do not compare my might to that of the Apocalypse Dragon. Whelps. I am on the first original 12 dragons that forged the world that the younger version resides in. I am an immortal." Morpheus roared, and suddenly both shadow clones leapt at their originals, and the two Dragonslayers now had their eyes wide as they were bombarded with numerous blows. The two flipped, twisted, and twirled as they dodged and deflected the strikes that aimed to damage their bodies. "The blows are coming in from too many angles to provide us with the proper timing to grab on and eat them." Uzumaki scowled. As he said this, a shadow fist slammed against his cheek, sending him skidding to the side before leaping over a leg. However, as he leapt, Namikaze had ducked beneath a kick to the head only to receive a powerful uppercut coming from below that sent him skyward. Two kicks from the shadow limbs sent him flying into his fellow Dragonslayer. The two tumbled to the ground only to be bound by giant hands of shadow. The two acted quickly and bit into the hands, feasting on their magic energy. However, they were only capable of getting a single mouthful as the two shadow clones sprouted numerous tendrils of shadow from their backs. The tendrils slammed into their faces, preventing them from getting a chance to bite down on the shadow hands that bound them as well as react to defend themselves. When the blows stopped raining down, Namikaze and Uzumaki snarled as their healing factors kicked in and removed any damage done to their persons. They were suddenly released from the grips of the hands, but that was because they found themselves now standing atop a sea of shadow. The white-walled room was no longer white. During the time the two Dragonslayers had been trying to release themselves from their bindings, the ink-colored shadows had bled from the two shadow clones of Namikaze and Uzumaki, having covered the entire room. "Your power is mine to use, Dragonslayers. As of now, you are no longer free and you have no free will. You will not deny me my right to escape this wretched world, and your powers will be what will make my plan a reality." Morpheus's voice echoed throughout the room as it came from the shadow pool itself. Suddenly, the shadows rose of their own accord. Namikaze and Uzumaki flew into the air to avoid being taken into the shadows, but the shadows had covered the entirety of the room. Namikaze sent forth bursts of wind and even used an Odama Rasengan, but the shadows seemed to absorb the impacts and the older Dragonslayer was forced to retreat. And then, the shadows consumed them. It was pitch black, too dark to see. Not even Namikaze's eyes, which were now a shining white in order to personify his rage, could not pierce the darkness. Namikaze and Uzumaki attacked their surroundings, but they touched nothing within the void of darkness. Uzumaki then inhaled deeply in an attempt to take in whatever magic energy made up the shadow prison, but his eyes widened. "This is pure shadow. There is no magic at all present in this, so we cannot consume it with our abilities," Uzumaki growled. "I refuse to die here," Namikaze snarled. "Do you fear death, young Dragonslayers?" "I fear nothing," the two Dragonslayers snarled. Insert music. Generator Rex Van Kleist theme start at 111*. Morpheus merely chuckled in response. The two Dragonslayers turned in the direction that the chuckle originated from. As their heads snapped in the general direction of the loud laugh, they soon found themselves staring into an enormous pair of crimson eyes. The two Dragonslayers then gaped in awe as a shining purple aura surrounded the image of the mighty phantom dragon. The dragon was large, easily matching Acnologia in size. His scales were a dark shade of violet arcing from his neck to the tip of his tail, was a sickly yellow color. The dragon's body was menacing, with tough muscle rippling beneath the scales and skin with each breath the Lord of Phantasms took. His facial structure consisted of a short snout with 3 spikes jutting from his chin, the middle spike being bigger than the 2 laying beside it. 2 more spikes jutted out from his cheekbone area. The largest spikes emerged from his upper regions of his skull, with 2 horns curving upwards from the side of his head and a 3rd spike coming from the actual top of his skull. Above his crimson eyes were a pair of reddish-violet horns that, like his spikes, teeth and claws, were incredibly sharp at the tip. A small row of spines went down from the base of his skull and stopped between the shoulder blade area of his forelimbs. Continuing from the shoulder blades were pairs of large, bone-white spikes that went to the middle area of his long, thick tail. Said tail had a wicked-looking tip as its appearance bore the image of a jagged blade of some sort. Now just so you won't be getting any ideas, I'll be taking these from you. Namikaze's eyes widened when he saw a black portal, a pocket dimension, the physically 20-year-old realized. He saw Ascalon and Excalibur had emerged from the corridor of darkness like it were an everyday door. Morpheus laughed at the elder Dragonslayer's surprised facial expression. Now, you didn't really think I could control a whole separate dimension without having gained the basics of pocket dimension control now did you? Now the corridor of darkness should do well to keep you from getting anywhere near these blades anytime soon. Namikaze struggled all the more as he watched the weapons of his mother being taken from him as they were locked away in the corridor of darkness, a black portal that led to a void of emptiness. Now, you both have been raised well by the dragon of the Apoclaves, even if they are 2 different versions of the mighty Acnologia. Now I think it is time I take your powers for my own. May you have pleasant times within oblivion, in the world that never was. His dark violet claws glowed brightly as he flexed his raised forelimbs and he rested the tips of said claws on the foreheads of his 2 captives. With that, 2 egg-shaped orbs of sickly violet-black magic energy encompassed the 2. Their eyes rolled into the backs of their heads and they fell into the blissful sleep that Morpheus so nicely titled, Oblivion. Morpheus laughed darkly and he gripped the 2 eggs and took a deep inhalation of air within the shadows. The veins beneath his scale-covered flesh suddenly became visible and they pulsed simultaneously with the eggs of magic in his hand. And with this, the multiverse shall be mine for the taking. Insert music. Kingdom Hearts dearly beloved extended. The world that never was, Oblivion. Namikaze grunted as he rose up from his resting place, the sun's ever-annoying rays of gold shining in his face. Covering his face, Namikaze settled himself in a sitting position. Glancing around, Namikaze's shining sapphire eyes found themselves gazing at what looked to be regular bedroom. There was a side table with a lamp and an empty cup ramen with the chopsticks still resting in it. A walk-in closet lay directly opposite him. Looking down, he found himself laying atop the soft, sheet-covered mattress and kicked away the orange blanket that enveloped him. With a groan, the blonde dropped down from the bed and headed for the bathroom. I hate the morning, he mumbled as he rubbed the tiredness from his eyes. After having a shower, Namikaze dressed himself. His clothing consisted of an orange t-shirt with a red spiral on it with black long pants. White socks were worn on his feet and covered by a pair of black boots. Scratching his whisker-marked cheeks, the blonde headed down the stairs and entered a kitchen area. "Morning, Naruto-kun." A happy female voice resounded through the kitchen area. "Well, look who's up." A male voice graced the blonde's hearing organs this time. Namikaze sat himself at the table and yawned. "Good morning, Tu-chan, Ka-chan." Namikaze glanced at his parents. Kushina and Minato smiled at the young boy before Minato reached over and patted his head. "Oh, and before we forget, happy 13th birthday." Kushina grinned like a fox as she placed a breakfast bowl of ramen before her son and kissed his cheek. "Oh, my baby boy is growing up so fast. I remember back when you were still just a tyke. You and that fat baby butt of yours always running around naked in the house." Namikaze's cheeks flushed in embarrassment as he wiped away the saliva from Kushina's kiss in disgust. "Ka-chan, stop bringing that up." He then turned and glared daggers at his father as Minato was cracking up. In fact, he was laughing so hard, tears were coming to his eyes. "I'm sorry, Naru, but your mother just makes me laugh every time she brings up that memory. Kushina-chan, remember when he was doing that and he nearly fell into the koi pond?" Namikaze huffed indignantly before digging into his ramen, drowning out his parents' laughter with his noisy slurping. After feasting upon the succulent noodles and pork, he drained the bowl of the broth before resting the completely empty bowl on the table. The bowl sparkled and Kushina smiled at her son with pride. "See that, Minato-kun, that's my boy, Databane. He may have your looks, but the metabolism for a ramen-based diet is all mine, and you said he wouldn't be tall if he kept eating ramen." Kushina smirked smugly at her husband as she picked up the bowl. "Yes, Kushina-chan." Minato rolled his eyes. "Don't roll your eyes, Tte Bane. Kushina's eyes became pure white and her crimson hair rose up and split into 9 locks, wriggling and swishing as if they were tails. Naruto glanced back and forth at the verbal exchange between his parents. He then rose up from his chair and turned to his father. "2-chan, come on, it's time for training. Now that I'm 13, you finally said you'd let me learn your energy make." "Rasengan," Namikaze grinned toothily, bouncing up and down in excitement. Minato rested down the newspaper he held in his hands and then walked up to Kushina, kissing her on the lips. "Come back before dinner time, okay? And Naruto-kun, make sure you listen to exactly what your father tells you or you may end up hurting yourself." Kushina scolded her 2 favorite blondes. "Yes, Ka-chan." Namikaze and Minato mock saluted the crimson-haired woman. Kushina rolled her eyes and waved them goodbye when they exited the house. Closing the door behind them, the 2 males ran along the dirt path that led from their house before heading to a grassy field that shone like emeralds. The waters of the nearby pond shone like crystal as the sun's rays reflected off of its surface. Minato then formed a few hand motions and activated the spell seal magic pocket dimension before drawing out a relatively small brown bag. "Now Naru, remember what I told you when I explained the theory behind my energy make techniques?" Minato asked his son. Namikaze nodded in response. "Yes. The energy make techniques you created are made by producing pure eternano by actually drawing upon it from within the magic energy circulatory system within the body. You then rotate the magic energy in many different directions and condense it into a spherical shape by will alone. But you must make sure to keep your focus on its stability, hence why you had me learn multitasking ever since I was 6 years old." "Yes. And why a sphere?" Ka-chan said it was because you were too damn lazy to work on any other 3-dimensional shape. Namikaze stated bluntly, causing Minato's sweat drop at his son. "No, Naru. No, I need to have a word with Kushina-chan though, but anyway, the reason behind using a sphere as the basis for all energy make techniques is because the sphere is the shape that is most capable of being held together when compressing the magic energy. If I were to use, for example, a cube rather than a sphere incapable of undergoing compression, as the eternano particles which make it up would need to be held stiffly together in order to keep it intact," Minato explained. Namikaze nodded in understanding. "Now continue with your explanation." Namikaze nodded to his father. After condensing it into the spherical shape via shape manipulation, the rotational energies brought about by the magic energy act to provide the power that your Rasengan is famous and or infamous for. Also, due to the fact that energy make spells are pure eternano, there are many ways to change it by adding an elemental magic type to it. "Excellent work, Naru. I knew you were a smart child." "What did you think of me before?" Namikaze asked with a raised eyebrow. Minato's sweat dropped, a nervous smile on his face. "Let's get to training. You're avoiding the question, Tte Bayo," Namikaze roared comically, waving his arms wildly. He then stopped when he saw his father reach into the brown bag and pull out a water balloon. Minato then gained a serious look of concentration and Namikaze felt Minato's magic energy spike lightly, and suddenly, the water balloon began to bulge and spike, as if the water were boiling within the balloon. The water balloon then popped and Minato looked up at his son. "Your first exercise to learn the energy make, Rasengan, the parent spell for all of my techniques, is to pop this water balloon using your magic energy alone," Minato instructed the 13-year-old boy. Namikaze blinked in confusion as a water balloon was placed in his hand. "Go on." Minato smiled, acting as if he were coaching a toddler who was now beginning to walk on his own 2 feet. Namikaze stared at the water balloon and looked at it intently. He reached deep within himself, drawing upon the magic energy that lay within his body and concentrated it into his hand and began to rotate it. However, he frowned when saw the water balloon merely stretched. "That looks nothing like how Do-chan had done it." With a growl of frustration, Namikaze continued trying to make the water balloon pop through magic energy alone, but to no avail. After 3 hours, Naruto had managed to pop numerous balloons, but that was only because he had stretched the balloons beyond their maximum. He still hadn't managed to pop it in the manner that his father had. Minato glanced up from the book he was reading as he saw his son plop down on the ground with a groan of frustration. "Giving up already? I'll have you know that it took me 3 weeks to actually figure out a way to master the principle I'm teaching you now, so don't be ashamed even if you are giving up." "Like hell I am, Datbeo, so much like Kushina-chan when he gets mad." Minato chuckled at the thought. He then watched as his son held the water balloon with a contemplative expression. The balloon is only stretching and expanding, but with 2 chans it looked like it was spiking up everywhere. "Maybe I have to make the water spike?" Naruto shook his head. "No, rotation is the key. I know that much, but just what the hell is he doing?" "Why don't you try your doodle method?" Minato suggested. Namikaze glanced up at his father with a perplexed look on his face. "Remember when you were 4, every time you had a problem with anything, you used to just take up my magic pen that I used to draw seals and just doodle, and yet somehow, by some unimaginable force, your doodles turned into the answer that you were looking for. Like when you didn't know how to get your fox plushie from the top of the roof. You refused help from Kushina-chan and I as you tried to find a solution, and then later that day, you started doodling a picture of yourself climbing invisible steps to get to the top of the house and grab your plushie, and well, apparently that connected things together for you as you went into the garage and grabbed the step ladder and then raced back outside and retrieved your plushie. Yeah, well I guess it wouldn't hurt to try. Wait, is this another one of your plots to make me do something stupid again, like when you had me eat that spoonful of cinnamon, Tu-chan? Minato shook his head. No, I swear on your mother's name, but you gotta admit that was pretty stupid. Everyone knows that you can't swallow cinnamon. A chuckle escaped him as he recalled the cinnamon incident. Your face was priceless though. Wanna see the picture? No, he yelled at his evil father's teasing. Now shut up, you vile devil of a man. Minato grinned toothily before watching as his son picked up a stick and began drawing in the dirt. Namikaze just doodled pictures of animals at first, but then he began to go into making random shapes. He began drawing swirls in the dirt and soon the ground was a field of swirl-shaped drawings. Naruto continued to draw swirls until he spotted a mass of them that he had drawn earlier, all of them intersecting at some point. He got up and walked closer to the swirls and saw that they eventually started to look like bumps on the edge of a circle. His eyes widened in realization. The epiphany had struck him, and it had struck him hard. Of course, he exclaimed. He isn't rotating in a single direction, he's rotating it in multiple directions, which is why the water spiked up in so many different parts of the balloon. Told you the doodle method would work. Did I ever tell you you're the best Tu-chan ever? Yes, on multiple accounts. Minato chuckled at his son. Namikaze then applied the magic energy into the water balloon he was currently struggling with before applying his magic energy. With a smirk he controlled the flow of the magic energy, having the water rotate in many different directions, and the balloon began to shake as the rubber spiked in many different locations. Finally, it burst apart, shredded into numerous pieces. Yata, Tou-chan, did you see that? Namikaze bounced around before thrusting his fist into the air, head facing the ground with a toothy grin on his face. Oh yeah, check it out, we got a badass over here. Well done, Naru. I'm proud of you, and the fact that it only took you the entire day is a testament to how awesome you are. Namikaze grinned toothily at his father. So does that mean I can learn the Rasengan now? Minato laughed. Bitch please. You've got a long way to go before you can learn the Rasengan in its entirety. Start small, Naru. Don't worry, you'll learn the Rasengan soon enough. Fine. But I'm still a badass. Yes, you are indeed a badass. The father and son duo high-fived each other before Minato grabbed his son. Now come on, it's time to go home. Oh, Tu-chan, can we do it the special way? Naruto, you know that you get motion sickness. Minato replied with a concerned look on his face. Come on, it's my birthday. Please, just this once, Namikaze begged. Minato tapped his chin in thought before nodding. Alright, Yata. But you have to eat your vegetables at dinner then. No skipping out, even if it is your birthday. Yes, Tu-chan. With that, Namikaze leapt atop his father's back and Minato whipped out his magic pen and drew a complex seal array on the ground. The kanji then glowed as Minato planted his palm on the array. Seal magic. Hiraishin. A flash of yellow emerged from the seal and covered the two blondes. The flash vanished in a jiffy and soon there was nothing left of the father and son duo. Namikaze felt his skin ripple from the speeds his father moved at. Going through a dimensional wormhole did have its perks though, for even though Namikaze felt the urge to hurl, not even a second had passed as the two blondes reappeared in front of their home. Namikaze leapt off of his father's back and shook his dizzied self. I told you. I don't care. Moving at hyperspeeds through an interdimensional wormhole beats walking any day. Namikaze replied. Minato chuckled at his son before they entered their house to find Kushina waiting for them. Kushina glanced between the two blondes who froze under her evil eye. You used Hiraishin again, didn't you? It's my birthday, Ka-chan. Let it go hand in a dismissing manner. Horrible excuse, Naruto-kun, however, for letting this slide. I already got him to agree to eat his vegetables in return, Kushina-chan. Don't worry, your husband is a smart man. Minato assured his wife and he hugged her and kissed her cheek. Kushina and Namikaze rolled their eyes at the older blonde's vanity and then sat themselves down for dinner. After a delectable feast of rice, roast pork and sautéed vegetables, the family of three immediately delved into Naruto's birthday cake. Happy birthday to Naruto, happy birthday to Yo, Kushina and Minato clapped as they took the pictures of him blowing out his 13 birthday candles. The young teen grinned as he feasted on the spoils of waiting 365 days for this moment to occur. The blonde then sniffled as he felt tears of happiness appear in his eyes. This is the best day ever. Minato and Kushina smiled warmly at their son. Suddenly, the house began to shake and the ground rumbled beneath their feet. Ka-chan, Tu-chan. What's happening? The two never got a chance to reply as the area of the house where his parents were standing suddenly became enveloped in a flash of energy. Naruto, Ka-chan, Tou-chan. Namikaze could only watch as his family members and half of his house was utterly obliterated. There was nothing left but a gargantuan trench in the earth where that area of the house used to be. Tears welled up in his eyes, only for said sapphire orbs to widen as he came face to face with the monstrosity that took Minato and Kushina away from him. Do not believe this lie. The black-scaled dragon spoke. Namikaze stared at the image of Agnology, the black dragon of the apocalypse, unable to utter a response. Morpheus is trapping your mind within a realm of dreams, taking what you most wanted in this world and making it a reality. Now stop dreaming of things that can never be real. I must concur with the dragon half. Namikaze looked up and the teenage body looked to see he was looking at an older version of himself, his original body. Though I am what makes up your humanity, you also constructed me with the ideology that you must move on from the past and remain strong. It has been what has made us strong so far. Though, the dream before us does show us the reality of our soul, or rather, my half of it, doesn't it, dragon? Aye, that it does, human. Despite the antagonistic feelings we always display towards them for abandoning us, we know that deep down that the soul we have longs for the compassion and love that they could have given to us had they survived Agnologia's onslaught. Namikaze blinked as he watched the conversation between his two personalities and then they vanished before him in a flash. The teenage Namikaze's eyes widened as his original memories came back to him. 110 years of training in a pocket dimension with Agnologia and 20 physical years of living within his original world. All of it reappeared within his mind. The young Dragonslayer blinked once more and he found himself within the white void that made up his mindscape, his body now in its original 20-year-old form. The image of the 5-point elemental seal cast its soft crimson light and Namikaze found himself facing the spirits of his parents that had been sealed within him. Naru-chan. We saw the dream and, is it true? Did you really want us to be there for you? Kushina asked. Namikaze snarled at his mother's and father's spirits, but the snarl slowly died down to a frown. I don't know. I respected you both, but I could never come to bring myself to call you both my parents because you were not there for me. From the perspective I had placed myself in, your deaths seemed like acts of abandonment and so I resented you both and remained antagonistic towards you. You were not there to raise me, to teach me things, to be my parents. Namikaze sighed. However, upon my different mentalities informing me of the fact that somewhere within the recesses of my mind, I had always wanted you both to be alive and be with me. My draconian pride would have me deny the claim that I would want to associate with you on any sort of level. But now… Naruto. Minato couldn't find any words to say to his son. After so many years of spiting them and hating them, the truth was that his humanity longed for them to be alive and to be with him. Tell me something. Namikaze looked at his parents. What is it, Naru-chan? Kushina replied. Since you say that we're capable of seeing the dream that I had while in oblivion. He bit his lip as if contemplating whether or not to speak, but the blue eyes of the Ogo no Fujin hardened as he steeled his nerves. I need to know. Had you been alive, would you have raised me just as the dream versions of yourselves had? Without a doubt. The two replied to their son. The reply was instant and Namikaze's eyes widened for a split second. And do you believe that should you have raised me, that I would have come to care for you like I had appeared to within the world that never was? Naruto. Minato was the one to reply this time. Kushina-chan and I believe that no matter whether or not you would care for us, we would always love you. The choice to reciprocate those feelings is your choice. Even if we did raise you, a parent cannot fully decide on how their child should feel towards them. We could have influenced it if we were alive, but things may change over time that could cause you to react antagonistically towards us. Your mother and I love you very much, Naruto. And so we believe, had we raised you, you could have come to care for us like you did in that dream world and we hope that one day you will eventually make that a reality. Namikaze nodded before walking up to them, passing between them as if they were a pair of open doors. Kushina and Minato glanced at each other in shock as they saw the appearance of what actually appeared to be a genuine smile as the Dragonslayer of Agnologia walked by before quickly turning to look at their sons retreating back. Naruto. I'm returning to the world that never was to find that brat of a doppelganger in oblivion. Namikaze stated. I'm not entirely sure that I can come to terms with what you both have just told me after everything that I've had myself believe about you, but I'll be coming back here once this is all over. After all, I have some catching up to do with the people that I now recognize as my parents. And with that, the world around Naruto appeared to shatter like glass as he exited his mindscape to return to oblivion. The world that never was, oblivion, what happened? Thought Uzumaki as his consciousness arose from what felt like a deep slumber. He felt his consciousness drift away and eventually, his sight was consumed by the darkness. The environment around him had so much pressure he felt as if couldn't feel his own body. In fact, when he tried to move he couldn't feel his limbs at all. What is going on? Oni-chan. Uzumaki's ears twitched as he heard a voice echo around him. The voice sounded like that of a child of about 5 or 6 years if his approximation was correct. Though, the voice had held some sort of familiarity toward him. It was then, upon hearing said voice, that the darkness around him slowly opened as streams of light broke through the curtain of darkness. The streams of light then broadened until it surrounded the blonde's location. The light then died down and Uzumaki blinked rapidly as his vision returned to him, his pupils expanding and dilating to regulate the flow of light into his eye. He then glanced around. Within his new view of where he was at, he could see several wild cherry blossom trees blowing across the lush grass within the near mountainside. Uncontrollable movement caused him to follow each direction of where the entity was looking. Uzumaki knew this place, he knew it all too well as he familiarized himself with it as a child. He realized that this was Ing and this was the only place that made him see the good things in the world. Sadly, it also brought him the greatest nightmares in his sleep. It was the hidden temple of Galadriel, the lost hidden sanctuary of the elves. No, that damn dragon wouldn't. His hand tightened into a fist as he watched his memory continue. Uzumaki could see a figure coming up as his younger self continued forward toward it. It was only at that moment that he had realized that it was indeed the memory that he held close in his mind, because it was something that he could never let go out of sorrow and regret. The figure in view was basked in the light of the morning spring sun. It was a rather petite yet defined figure, best described physically as a woman. Though being around 5 feet and 7 inches, she was a bit taller than the average woman. However, she was different from other women. She had something about her that made her different in Naruto's eyes even now looking at her in this dream, and he still could not put his heart into it. The woman had a pure white dress made out of the finest of silks as it glistened in the light like it was snow. To match her outfit, she was wearing a white hat that covered her head and white sandals, all which matched her creamy pale white skin and snow-white lips. Her eyes held a broad golden hazel to them, her hair, a beautiful silver that seemed to have a luminescent shine to it. Her ears were similar to a human's, but had a sharp point to them at the upper ridge of said hearing organs. Looking at her now, many would suspect she would be a goddess in human form due to her supernatural appearance. Though that is not what defined her, it was not how she dressed or how she looked physically or the feeling of power that surrounded her. It was kindness that defined her. Her caring nature was what made her so angelic. Instantly, Naruto was launched away from the person as he was directly hit with one of her sandals. The blonde landed on the ground in pain and he pulled off the sandal that was stuck on his face and growled. "What the hell was that for?" roared the young Uzumaki, still retaining a red mark upon his face from the shoe. "I told you not to interrupt me while I'm taking care of the flowers," the woman roared back in a manner that was the exact of her angelic appearance. She huffed and continued to work on a set of white and red roses. Damn brat. Even though she was an 800-year-old elf, she doesn't still have a single ounce of maturity in her. Uzumaki thought with an amused smirk as he watched the memory replay itself. Old hag. Old hag, muttered the young, 6-year-old Uzumaki before getting another sandal thrown at his head. "I heard that," yelled the white-clothed elf as she cooled down and looked at the blonde. "Now will you come over here and help me, Naruto, or do you not want to learn something new?" she asked. The moment Uzumaki heard those words, he instantly got up to his feet and ran towards her like a puppy running to get a doggy treat. "Okay, Catalina nay." The elf, now known as Catalina, smiled as she handed Naruto the basket of flowers. "Good, now hold this while I replant these flowers into the ground," she said as she continued making small dirt holes in front of the rose bushes, replanting each rose one by one as she continued the process of planting flowers of such exotic design. "Why do you have to plant these things?" Uzumaki asked as he touched one of the leaves of the planted flowers. "They are simply plants. Weak and are not necessary for anything. Everything is necessary in this world, Naruto. Each living thing has an involvement in life in which they have a purpose to exist." Catalina opened one of the flowers carefully to show Naruto. "See this flower? Inside it holds seeds and a type of pollen which is used for its reproduction. They can grow more flowers, they feed birds and many insects that feed off them. You know that honey you love so much, right? Well, bees use the pollen to sweeten the honeycombs in the beehive that they live in. What would happen if flowers never existed?" Catalina asked as she smirked. Uzumaki narrowed his eyes. "Simple. Everything that would need flowers would die off. It's more than just that, Naruto. Honey would never exist, no one would ever experience the smells of such wonderful things and they would find no beauty in plant life whatsoever." Catalina looked at the sky before continuing. "Let me give you a broader example, Naruto." She glanced down at the young boy as he stared up at her, his attention solely directed at her. "Say that I had no reason to exist, what would you say?" "I would say you are most definitely wrong." The blonde narrowed his eyes. "You have every reason to exist." "Why is that, Naruto?" "Because you are someone I care about. Also, if you weren't around I would have been bored with Tutumi's teachings. I need some amusement in my life," Uzumaki said with a smirk. Catalina smiled before a tick mark grew on her forehead. She released a shallow chuckle as she pulled on his cheeks with her fingers, applying quite a bit of pressure. "Aren't you the cutest thing ever, Naru-chan? You are so good with your words, aren't you?" she said as she continued to apply more pressure to the struggling blonde's cheeks before the blonde bit her hand and ran away. After a few minutes of soothing his swollen cheeks and being chased by an angry elf, The two sat down by a stream that was running down the mountain by the shrine. Catalina had her feet in the water current as she looked at the blonde next to her. Naruto, what does that dragon tell you about humanity? No, what does he teach you about humanity? Uzumaki looked at the elf before turning his gaze towards the mountain. In his words, humanity is weak, they are nothing more than ants under the claws of the dragon. Humanity is an accumulation of a species which are anomalies of the world that cause nothing but total disaster to the world. They are greedy, ignorant, arrogant, fear what they cannot control, and believe that everything should be given to them by just holding out their hand. In other words, they are pathetic and deserve to rot. He said as he closed his eyes. He told me that emotions are the strength of all beings, however they need to be restrained, otherwise they will bring upon destruction to the world. I see. Catalina muttered. The elf took her hat off and placed it upon her lap as she swayed her feet around the water. Do you believe his words? I wouldn't know. I haven't come across many humans in the mountains, and whenever he lets me enter a village it is only to get the proper food, clothing, books, and other supplies while continuing my training. I have never gotten any amount of time to converse with children my age or adults aside from merchants. The blonde opened his eyes and looked at the golden eyes of the elf. However, I do not believe his words on emotions. I believe emotions make a person and allow them to become strong, and even though emotions can blind a person and consume them, the drive of the emotion they hold can bring them strength. It is just up to whose emotion is stronger in the end, whether facing a powerful enemy or against yourself. Catalina looked at the blonde child and smiled as she gently placed her arms around him and wrapped him in a soft embrace, gently stroking the back of his head. At least you're not heartless, or else I would have knocked some sense into you. She said quietly to Uzumaki. You're a strong boy, Naruto, strong enough to handle yourself, but you do not know how to fight with the strength of your emotions. Only with your power. You may live to fight the good fight, but there will be one day that you will face a force you can only hope to face, and your power alone will not be able to help you. You will have to find the emotion and the reason that drives you the most in life to push the unmovable. Can you get to the point, Ne-chan? You are not making sense, Uzumaki said densely, though knowing in some sense of what she was getting at. Catalina SD to speak. Naruto, within the year that I have known you I have seen you go from showing a cold nature from day one to expressing yourself more openly, even though you have your quirks of being apathetic towards things you don't truly see the point of. Though, that is what makes you unique. You don't understand it, but you find some keen interest in it and you watch it as if it was a newborn baby in front of you. You are subconsciously passionate about life around you. You are so in tune with life and death that it can be seen as a sight that only a god could see from a person's point of view. I just wish that your life did not come to be like this, being raised by a force that can shake the foundations of the world we reside upon. Uzumaki narrowed his eyes as he pushed a bit to look directly in the face of the elf. The mysterious beauty held power in her gaze, but Uzumaki held a fearless nature as he stood his ground. Now hold your tongue, he protested, a snarl coming to his face. Tuteme may be rough around the edges and he may be hard to talk to, but he has my respect. He has raised me instead of leaving me to die as a baby. He fed me, taught me to read and write, gave me a place to sleep. What more could I ask for him? Love. The word that came from the white elf sent a throb in Uzumaki's chest. You have never had experienced the emotion from him, something you should have gotten as a child, and it hurts me to know that you were sheltered of an emotion that you needed the most. The elf placed her left hand on Naruto's cheek and stared at him with only loving eyes that a mother could give for her child. You never experienced the love of your birth parents or of your foster one, and I am so sorry for that to have happened to you. Through the years I have come to love you as if you were my own in all but blood, Naruto. If I were to wish anything, it would have been that I was the one who found you more than anything in the world. The young Uzumaki was silent at the revelation that the elf had said. His body shook with overwhelming excitement. Was this the feeling of anxiety? Or fear? No, this was something more than he could ever explain in his young mind, and something that he had never experienced before in his life. This feeling wasn't what he felt like when he had seen kurama or agnologia, power and intent filled with rage and malice. This feeling was euphoric and held such a positive nature that it coated Naruto with such warmth. It was alluring, comforting. Just simply looking at Catalina he felt as if he understood what she was asking, and he both knew and desired what she was going to ask. Naruto. She spoke calmly, do you want to stay here with me? The older Uzumaki, trapped in his dreams and forced to replay the incident as he watched through the eyes of his younger self, wanted nothing more than to say yes, yes 1,000 times over. He knew that his child form would have said yes as well. It was something that he would have wanted more than being a Dragonslayer. He would have sacrificed all the power in the world just to be with his surrogate mother-sister hybrid. Sadly, that dream would have never come to be, as this dream would only lead him to despair and hatred. Because this was the day that his nightmares began. This was the day he lost the mother he never had. Catalina's body jumped up as she pushed Naruto into the river as a blast of magic hit her upon her side. She flew across the river, landing on the other side as she landed on the hard, gravelly floor. Naruto was pushed by the water currents as he was dragged under, Every time he would push up he could see Catalina on the ground, and every time he would see a pair of cloaked figures approaching her. "No, Ga!" cried out the young blonde as he was being dragged in further toward the edge. "Get up!" roared the older Uzumaki as he could feel himself being consumed by the fast-running water through his younger self's body, feeling the edge approaching closer and closer. As he continued to approach the place that marked the edge of the river, he tried to resist the water's powerful flow, but his younger, weaker body could not give him the power he so desperately wanted to call upon. "Get up, you fool!" It was at that moment he could feel control, just a little at that moment, as he felt a shift in power rise and his body came to a stop in the water. He could feel that his younger body was under 7 feet of high-pressured water. However, once he was submerged, the power burst forth. A series of intersecting chain links made of kanji glowed across his body before snapping. A pulse of blue and crimson energy shot forth from the boy's body. The river water evaporated from the heat of the chakra that was released from the boy's body, and Uzumaki released a roar of agony and rage as he felt the pain and helplessness of seeing his mother figure being left to die once more. The world became a void of white as the chakra continued to rush from his body, the image of the dream world breaking down. There was a reason Morpheus called the dream world, the world that never was, oblivion, and Uzumaki just found out why. Uzumaki gritted his teeth before he fell to his knees and slammed his arms down on the ground of the white void, unleashing another rush of his own chakra and Kurama's chakra. No, not again. I was so goddamn close. Fuck, Uzumaki's chest heaved as he vented his emotions. He then rose to his feet, an apathetic look on his face, but the look in his eyes betrayed his true intentions that he chose to keep hidden from the world. The blue orbs were outlined with a deep crimson, his pupils becoming vertical slits. A pale white glow also came from his sclera as his draconian nature broke through slightly. Uzumaki twisted around and his fist was ready to impact with the presence he detected behind him, but his eyes widened when he saw the fist was easily caught in his older counterpart's palm. "You are a very troublesome individual to find, brat." Given the situation, Morpheus would have placed us in different dreamlike dimensions. How in the name of the dragons would have found me? Even in the world that never was of oblivion, it was quite easy to pinpoint you upon sensing the spike in that odd chakra energy, magic energy and killing intent. Though we were locked within our own areas of oblivion, the fact remains that there would be a link between our respective dream worlds. The sleeping worlds of our own fantasies in the world that never was act as the building blocks for oblivion, so it would stand to reason that oblivion is in itself a world of its own, and as a result, there would be connections between those building blocks leading from one block to the next, the blocks being my dream world and yours in this case. Oblivion is indeed a horrific world where it seals you within a dreamlike state that would place you within a state of nirvana. Uzumaki and Namikaze blinked at the sound of the deep voice that reverberated through the void of oblivion, but suddenly found themselves standing in a sewer complex. In front of them was a gargantuan cage, Kurama sitting behind the bars of the cage. Namikaze glanced around the area before settling on the cage. He gave a nod to the biju out of respect for the beast, a nod of respect being returned to him. Namikaze then hovered up to the bars of the cage and observed the seal tag and placed his hand on it. A double tetragram seal making an 8 trigram seal. The seal acts as a way to bind you to the brat while also leaking your energy into his system. It seems the nature of your fuinjutsu and my seal magic is not all that different. In fact, I would go so far as to say they are practically identical in all but name and energy source. This is quite an impressive seal, brat. Namikaze dropped down from his position in the air and splashed down by his younger counterpart. Impressive. To deduce the nature of the seal that binds me to the brat through no more than a touch is quite a feat. I have spent years studying the topic. Uzumaki rolled his E-chakra beast and his older counterpart engaged in conversation. Yes, you know your seal magic. Bravo, old man, but now is not the time for you and my inner demon to be having a conversation. Kurama nodded with a serious look in his crimson eyes. Though the situation is rare, I will have to agree with my jinchuriki. You and my jinchuriki must escape from oblivion and take down Morpheus. You will have to restrain your powers though, as you will need to first take him alive in order to somehow gain the information needed to return to our respective worlds. That is actually a task I excel in. A sealing method or a rune magic method to extract information would take much too long to construct. It is not seal magic, nor would it require your rune magic, brat. My right eye banishes memories from the mind and shatter the mind if I so wish to do so. My left eye allows me to show my own memories through holographic representation, but with both allow me complete access to the mindscape of the one who gazes into them. Namikaze's eyes flashed white. Nothing can escape the eyes of a dragon. Kurama and Uzumaki gave a nod of satisfaction. Very well, old man. We have our information extraction method, but afterwards, it would be best to kill Morpheus. His presence is one that would be no longer required once his usefulness to us has expired. I concur. Now the question is, how do we remove ourselves from oblivion? Kurama tapped the bars of his cage, catching the attention of both Dragonslayers. The world of illusions is nothing new to me. The technique in the elemental nations known as Tsukuyomi places one in a seemingly separate dimension, but is actually an illusion. The world that never was, oblivion, is based upon that same principle, and thus I can break you both out of here. Kurama explained before glancing down at his jinchuriki. Naruto, I will need your Dragonslayer magic in order to carry this out. Why not mine? Surely mine is much more potent and obviously more powerful, Namikaze said. My Dragonslayer abilities far exceed yours, old man. I have actually slayed a dragon, Uzumaki countered. A mere dragon of the earth, I hardly see that as a challenge, you little brat. Do not tempt me into tearing your head off once more. Naruto. Both blondes snapped their heads in the direction of the Biju before glaring back at each other, and they calmed themselves with a nod. Actually boy, the reason I cannot use your magic is because my Jinchuriki's chakra and magic have both become very much accustomed to the inclusion of my chakra when it is mixed in. If I were to do the same with you, your body would burn up from the inside out, and I highly doubt you would want that. I know the nature of my chakra, boy, so do not even try to attempt an argument, as you will surely lose. Kurama said with a threatening growl. Namikaze growled back on reflex, but gave a nod of understanding. Kurama poked the tip of his large claws between the bars of his cage, and Uzumaki touched one of them with both his hands. Dark blue and ebony energy coated the kitsune's claws, and soon it extended all the way to the Biju's body. A bright crimson glow outlined the magic-covered kitsune, and then Kurama took a deep breath inwards. Namikaze's eyes widened as he quickly covered his ears. Uzumaki gave a chuckle as his older counterpart's reaction. Smart move. And with that, Kurama unleashed a mighty roar. Magic and Yukai burst forth from between the bars of the cage, and Namikaze and Uzumaki were overcome by the energy's flow. While Namikaze kept his ears blocked in order to prevent being thoroughly deafened, Uzumaki, who was accustomed to the loud roar of his Biju, watched around as the world that never was shattered like glass around them. When the roar died down, Namikaze and Uzumaki watched the shattered world before unleashing pulses of magic and chakra, respectively. Cracking their knuckles, they nodded to one another. It was time they showed Morpheus just how apocalyptic things can get when facing off against two sons of the Apocalypse Dragon. Castle Oblivion, Distortion World. The eggs of shadow suddenly released a crackling sound. Morpheus's crimson eyes narrowed in annoyance as he watched the orbs of magic in his hand stop pulsating. The veins of magic that has covered his body vanished, but the power he had gained from the two Dragonslayers by absorbing their magic energy had not been for naught. Morpheus released the eggs as they shattered apart. Before him stood the two sons of the Apocalypse, both with snarls adorning their faces. However, their hunched-over forms revealed that despite their attempt at bravado, they had been weakened by the Dragon of Phantasms. An impressive feat indeed to have broken free of my nightmare prison spell, but you are far too late. I have absorbed quite a large quantity of your Dragonslayer-based magic. Now, I will free myself of this disgusting world that I had been forced to call home, claim the multiverse as mine, and finally gain my revenge upon the Dragon Kings of both your worlds. Both? Namikaze said as he raised his head. The pleasure of slaying the Dragon King is mine alone. You overgrown gecko. Morpheus growled at the insult, but his crimson eyes gained a curious look upon them as Namikaze continued to speak. However, what I wish to know is why you would target my world's Dragon King? You hail from the Brat's universe, and shouldn't your revenge be targeted upon his Dragon King alone? Morpheus smirked and then pounced upon his prey. His grip held both Dragonslayers tightly, and the Dragon of Phantasms released a roar followed by a great magic pressure. With a flap of his wings, Morpheus took off in a skyward direction, breaking through the cloud of shadow he and his prisoners had been trapped in and through the highest tower of Castle Oblivion. The stone and brick fell to the ground of Castle Oblivion's floating island below, and Morpheus then aimed his head skyward, facing the crimson moon. Opening his jaws, a large concentration of magic energy coursed through the phantom dragon's veins and led up to his jaws, where a large accumulation of black and dark blue-colored magic energy swirled into a large orb of power. The orb then burst apart as a beam that stretched all the way to the crimson moon of the distortion world. Suddenly, the magic energy began to cause a ripple at the point where it seemed to vanish into the moon's visage. The ripple grew larger and larger until finally there was a mighty blast of energy that tore apart the very fabric of time and space. In the air where the moon once hovered was a large portal of black and blue energy that swirled like a whirlpool. Oh, the power of a dragon of Agnologia's caliber certainly does not disappoint. Due to launching the blast and casting my ability to control the world itself, I have finally become capable of finally breaking through the time-space barrier that severed from any other world in this wretched universe of ours. Both Dragonslayers watched in awe as black and dark blue magic energy erupted forth from the portal, and the distortion world itself seemed to quake from the magical energy that was bleeding off from the portal. Now, with my plan in completion, I think I should let you off with an answer to your question. Morpheus faced the elder Naruto he held in his claws. Namikaze looked up at the dragon as their gazes met. Now as to why I would target your Dragon King as well. Well, it's all quite simple. You see, when I was banished from the original world I had come from, the world where this other hatchling had originated from. Uzumaki growled at the word he had been referred to. The Dragon King had originally aimed to send me straight here to the distortion world, but using my mighty powers as one of the first 12 dragons to have forged the universe of your younger counterpart, I managed to take a little detour and ended up in your universe. I landed in Algesia around the time that the third generation of the Dragon King had come to pass. One of the advisors, the Void, and of course you can tell from the title that the Void Dragon would have easily managed to pick up on this tear in the fabric of spacetime, found me. I was saved and found salvation in Algesia. Your Dragon King showed me mercy, young Dragonslayer. The third generation Dragon King would have sent you to this world then most likely, Namikaze stated. Aye, that he did, and that is why I also set my sights on him. The Dragon of the Void and the Dragon of Time of Algesia had managed to track the coordinates of spacetime that I had originated from, flowing through the continuum itself. They found the Dragon King of my world and they were told of my charges of how I had clashed with my Dragon King and as punishment was to be sentenced to a lifetime in this outer world that you both now see before you. Upon their return I had then learned that I had been found out. The original Dragon King of my world had taken on a Dragonslayer and I found it a sign of weakness for a dragon of such a high caliber to take on a mere human as a student, and not to mention the fact that he taught the disgusting fleshbag the method of how to break through dragon scales, destroy a dragon's flesh and shatter a dragon's bones. Morpheus roared with rage. I would have none of it, and so I rebelled against my king. The Alagaesian Dragon King did not take a liking to the fact that I was against the formation of Dragonslayers, and as punishment, I was sentenced to this world here again. I would not have my freedom stripped from me, so I fought against the dragons. I fought against my kin once more. Dragonslayers are a stain upon the reputation of a dragon. There is no need to task oneself with teaching a mere human the abilities with which to destroy us. I do not find it necessary. Morpheus glared at both Dragonslayers before him and then grinned evilly, his razor-sharp teeth bared. Now, it is time I rid myself of you both. The portal has been opened and now I can take my revenge and the multiverse as my own. Now die you stains upon dragonkind. Morpheus squeezed tightly and both Dragonslayers howled with pain as they felt their bones creak and the pressure forcing their eyes to begin to bulge from their sockets. A mighty roar then pierced the air, and the roar did not originate from Morpheus, but from Uzumaki. A powerful crimson twister of demonic chakra flowed forth from Uzumaki, and with the strength of one tail of the Kyuubi no Yoko's power, a cloak of bubbling yukai coated his body. Uzumaki snarled as his bubbling chakra tail burst forth from the tailbone area of his cloak, and with another roar, Uzumaki freed himself from the grasp of the phantom dragon. He then leapt, so he was now eye level with the dragon. Morpheus's crimson eyes stared into the crimson eyes of the Kyuubi no Yoko, said eyes widening when he saw Uzumaki's chakra cloak extend and enlarge so that a giant clawed hand of pure demon chakra now sped through the air. Having been caught off guard by the sudden usage of Kurama's chakra, Morpheus was struck harshly. The dragon's head snapped back from the force of the blow. A roar came forth from the dark violet-scaled dragon and his grip was removed from the older Naruto. Namikaze took a deep gasp of air as he regained his ability to breath and quickly regained his bearings and hovered in the air as he activated his flying capabilities. The older blonde looked up just in time to see his younger counterpart's demonic form leap towards Morpheus. However, the mighty Lord of Phantasm batted away the jinchuriki like he was a fly. Calling upon his wings, Uzumaki spread them outwards and managed to slow himself as he tumbled through the air before coming to a complete stop. Morpheus looked between the two Dragonslayers before giving them a cocky smirk before turning around and flying forth towards the portal. In a few mighty flaps of his wings, Morpheus was already near the portal's entrance, but suddenly Namikaze appeared before the dragon's eyes. Mokashiryu no Jinshinkyaku. With his leg coated in black and blue magic energy, Namikaze unleashed a kick that clashed with Morpheus's cranium with the force to shatter human bones. However, since this was a dragon they were dealing with, there was no bone breakage, but there was still pain. Morpheus grunted as he was actually sent backwards a bit, his crimson eyes wide with shock. Why are you stopping me? You yourself claimed you wished to see the end of your world's Dragon King, so why? A dragon holds true to its promises. I made an oath of the dragon to kill the Dragon King of my world alongside my two-san, and I will not allow you to take that action for your own, Morpheus. Namikaze roared. His eyes then shifted from sapphire blue to a blinding white before he took off with a high amount of speed and aimed another magic-encased kick towards his reptilian opponent. But Morpheus merely roared in response. The roar released a mighty shock wave that sent Namikaze veering off course. When the winds generated by the violet-scaled dragon's roar subsided, a crimson streak raced through the air and collided with Morpheus's side. The gargantuan beast grunted as he felt the impact and looked down to see Uzumaki's yukai-encased form. The boy's arm was firmly planted against the scales that lay on the side of his body. You cannot pierce the scales of a dragon, human. Not even if you are a Dragonslayer. Morpheus twisted and Uzumaki now felt the crushing blow that was dealt to him by his opponent's spine-ridden tail. Uzumaki tumbled through the air, but managed to regain his bearings. Flapping his wings, he hovered next to his older counterpart. The two didn't even utter a single word to each other before they took off with enough speed to shatter the sound barrier. The sonic booms that followed their movement echoed through the air, and Morpheus's hearing was now handicapped as the sound barrier shattering damaged the dragon's eardrums slightly. With that, Uzumaki's chakra tail wrapped itself around the dragon's throat and began to squeeze. Morpheus gripped the tail, grunting as the acid-like chakra began to burn the flesh on the underside of his forehands, and then tore it apart with magic-encased claws. Morpheus roared again, this time augmenting the roar with magic, and a pulse of violet-black energy raced towards Uzumaki. Uzumaki took a deep breath and countered the roar with his own as the Kyuubi's chakra clashed with the Dragon of Phantasm's magic energy. A mighty explosion resounded through the air, and Uzumaki was suddenly met with the powerful headbutt of Morpheus, and the monstrous reptile continued to fly even though his opponent had been seemingly dealt with. Morpheus knew that the two Dragonslayers would no doubt aim to slow him down, defeating him being their best-case scenario, but it was because he was aware of this that Morpheus aimed to merely knock them aside. The portal shone right in front of him. The magic energy used to rip apart the space-time continuum would last for quite a bit of time, but knowing who his opponents were, Morpheus did not want to take any chances. His eyes narrowed as he flapped his wings heavily, a boost of speed being his reward, but Namikaze suddenly appeared before him once more. Namikaze reared back his fist, a large cloak of magic energy surrounding it. The magic energy increased to a very large size, at least 3 times the size of his body, and then morphed into the shape of Acnologia's sharpened claws, the Mokashiryu no Hakai Tsume. The large onyx claws of Dragonslayer magic attack flew forth towards Morpheus, but the mighty dragon's claws glowed like amethysts before a powerful slash impacted with Namikaze's own attack. The two attacks struggled for dominance, but being a dragon, Morpheus quickly gained the upper hand and smacked aside Namikaze. Namikaze quickly unleashed a burst of wind to stop his movement, but cursed as he saw the teasing grin on his opponent's face. A mock salute was then given to him and Morpheus entered the portal. Morpheus laughed to himself as he was dragged along the cure continuum that the portal created. I can't believe it. I've actually done it. I'm finally free of that wretched outer realm. Morpheus released a roar of victory as he began looking along the sides of the portal. Images of the different universes which existed in the multiverse passed by like one once glanced out of the window of a horse carriage to look at the scenery. An orange-haired boy wielding a black blade against a butterfly-like monstrosity of a man. A blonde boy with golden eyes and wearing a red cloak fought alongside a suit of living armor against a black being with numerous red eyes covering its body. A young black-haired boy was walking alongside a yellow mouse-like creature before it let loose a bolt of electricity at the boy. A large ship which bore resemblance to a sunflower lion hybrid sailed along the raging blue waters of the ocean blue, its crew laughing and smiling like there was no tomorrow. The flag of the ship which bore a straw hat wearing skull and crossbones whipped wildly in the winds. A brown-haired boy with spiky hair wielded a giant key, slicing away at black creatures with yellow eyes, as he fought alongside an anthropomorphic duck and dog who wielded a magic staff and shield, respectively. A young and devilishly handsome boy was typing away at a device that lay on his lap and appeared to be writing a story since words were appearing on the device's screen. Mutterings of breaking the fourth wall could be heard through the window in time and space as the 17-year-old boy continued to type. Morpheus felt a strange connection to this particular part of the multiverse, but he couldn't put his claw on it as to why. With a shrug and another flap of his wings, Morpheus continued to glance along the sides of the portal, watching the various windows which allowed him to gaze into the different parts of the multiverse itself where the numerous worlds lay, his crimson eyes darting left and right as he looked for the one that would lead to his original world. The world of magic which he had pulled Uzumaki from. Suddenly, a flash of crimson and black passed straight by him. Morpheus's eyes flickered every which way as the flashes of color bounced around the portal, and when the dizziness finally began to set in, the flashes disappeared. Namikaze and Uzumaki appeared beneath Morpheus's open maw. With Uzumaki's yukai and magic-covered fist and Namikaze's leg encased in Dragonslayer magic, the two blondes crashed their blows against the lower jaw of the dragon. Insert music. Pokemon Trainer Red Epic Remix. Miiryu no Tsume. Mokashiryu no Jinshinkyaku. The two powerful blows allowed the jaws of the mighty phantasm dragon to painfully impact each other with a clack. Morpheus roared in annoyance and spun around, his tails knocking both of his airborne opponents back. The violet-scaled dragon paused as he felt a wet feeling trailing from his mouth and along his muzzle. Raising a clawed forehand, Morpheus gently dragged the hand across his mouth and his eyes widened in shock. A streak of crimson blood, the blood of a dragon, stained his scales. Blood? Morpheus's figure trembled. You managed to wound me? You annoying pieces of human filth. How dare you spill the blood of a dragon? Your fate will be utter annihilation. We are not humans, Morpheus. Namikaze snarled, his white eyes shining with disgust at being titled as a human. We are Dragonslayers, Uzumaki yelled, the dark energy of Agnologia covering his body in order to emphasize the statement. Even worse, Morpheus slashed the air and arc of violet magic tore through the air, but Uzumaki and Namikaze inhaled deeply and merely took the magic energy for their own. Having been weakened from their time in oblivion, the magic energy Morpheus provided was more than enough to act as a form of sustenance and supply them with energy to replenish their magic energy systems. Namikaze then spun around as twin spear-tipped tail made entirely of magic energy extended from his tailbone. Mokashiryu no Shippo. The tail slammed against the side of Morpheus's head. Naruto continued to spin and the tail strikes continued in rapid succession, crashing against the dragon's skull. Sparks flew from the friction generated between the tail and Morpheus's scales. Finally, Namikaze's myriad of strikes did their job and Morpheus released a roar of pain as his tail finally broke through and a large line of crimson formed beneath the dragon's eye. The blood flowed freely and Namikaze stopped rotating so that he faced Morpheus head-on. Mokashiryu no Hoko. The roar of the apocalypse dragon sped forth, but the phantasm dragon slashed through the blast like a knife through hot butter. A sonic resounded through the portal and Uzumaki appeared above Morpheus and slammed down a giant crimson fist of chakra. But Morpheus merely roared to generate a shockwave that sent Uzumaki careening through the rift in time and space. However, as Uzumaki tumbled, he utilized his chakra cloak's ability to stretch and expand so that his two legs ended up slamming into the dragon's chest. Morpheus coughed as he felt the wind being forced from his lungs, but Morpheus merely released a roar of rage and plowed through the attack. He slashed the air and violet streaks of magic slammed into Uzumaki with terrific force. Despite the cloak of the Kyuubi's chakra protecting his body, the damage was still able to get through and a cry of pain elicited from the blonde jinchuriki. Uzumaki was then grabbed and slammed against the sides of the portal. A cry of pain rang out with each slam that Morpheus delivered. Taking advantage of his distracted opponent, Namikaze appeared in a swirl of wind with his claws coated in Dragonslayer magic. He raised his arm high and swung it down to deliver a crushing blow, but Morpheus's sense of hearing was not to be trifled with. The red-eyed dragon spun around, Namikaze's white eyes widening in shock at how quickly his opponent reacted, and a powerful tail strike slammed into his side. The sound of the blonde's bones creaking from the blow met the dragon's hearing organs, and with a toothy grin of malice, the dragon followed up by redirecting his rear appendage and coiling it around his opponent. Namikaze growled as he quickly coated his arms with magic and latched onto the sides of the tail. His arms trembled as he used his immense strength to prevent the dragon from wrapping the tail around his body. Channeling wind magic to his feet, a burst of compressed air gave Namikaze the speed needed to escape his would-be bindings. Morpheus snarled and then turned to Uzumaki, who was still trying to escape the dragon's clutches. The cloak was quickly losing its stability as the effects of the temporal spatial rift was beginning to take its toll on the jinchuriki. The 17-year-old blonde growled and unleashed a roar that sent a pulse of chakra against the walls of the portal, pushing him and the hand that held him back. With his body now having sufficient room to wriggle free, his cloak of demon chakra exploded outwards and gave the boy enough time to free himself. However, while he did manage to escape, Morpheus would not have his prey escape unharmed. With a deep inhalation of air, a stream of black smoke escaped the phantasm dragon's maw. The red-eyed jinchuriki glanced around the smoke and suddenly, an image of the blood-stained Catalina stood before him. Huh? Naruto-chan. Catalina's soft voice reached his ears and the blonde could only stare in shock at the image of the woman who had raised him to be human. That was all that was needed for Morpheus to strike. The pause in Uzumaki's movement allowed for the dragon to strike with a powerful swipe of his wings. Uzumaki grunted as he was now tumbling through the portal, and then a blast of violet magic energy slammed into him. A mighty explosion resulted. The smoke cloud quickly burst apart and Uzumaki stretched out his hand and Morpheus was swung across into the side of the portal, his spines causing flakes of magic energy to bleed off behind him. How did you do? Uzumaki snarled. I am the dragon of phantasms, nightmares and dreams. You really think I couldn't make your dreams come to life? Morpheus laughed. Uzumaki's eyes widened before they narrowed as an evil glow came to them. A second tail of chakra sprouted forth, but despite the power he had gained, the fact that his instincts were bordering on completely primal had lowered his guard, for as he was about to slash at Morpheus's face, aiming to rip it to shreds, said dragon of nightmares smacked him aside with his spiny tail. Before he could recover, a plume of black smoke obscured his vision and more bloody images of Cassandra formed. With a roar, the smoke cloud dispersed, along with Cassandra's copies, but a powerful slash sent him spiraling down to the bottom area of the portal. Uzumaki refused to go down and he quickly slammed his two tails down and pushed himself back into position, a reddish-violet orb of Yukai and magic forming in his hand. Kyuubi Rasengan. The orb slammed into the chest of the mighty dragon and a small explosion resulted. Morpheus growled as he looked at the small scorch mark on his scales form. A large, jagged crack extended along the length of Morpheus's chest where his sternum would be located. However, before the dragon could retaliate, Namikaze appeared behind him. A powerful kick sent the dragon leaning forward before he was sent flying towards Uzumaki as a powerful blast of magic impacted with his body, striking him directly between the wings. A pair of large crimson hands grabbed onto the sides of Morpheus's head, gripping the skull tightly. Morpheus grunted as he felt the strain on his neck muscles as the hands of red chakra pulled. With a mighty roar, Uzumaki hurled Morpheus over his head. Being relatively airborne now, Namikaze appeared above the dragon, kicking off the upper areas of the portal and spun like a drill as he descended. Mokashiryu no Soso. Twin spears of magic energy that looked like the ends of Acnologia's tail encased Namikaze's arms. A brief flash of black and blue appeared in Morpheus's vision and he suddenly released a cry of pain. Despite not cutting all the way through, the twin spears slammed themselves into Morpheus's chest where Uzumaki's Rasengan has formed their cracks earlier. Namikaze then grunted as he used the spears of magic as anchors. A trickle of blood came from Morpheus's lips as Namikaze hurled him across the portal's interior. A large flow of the life liquid also began to pour forth from the wound in the dragon's chest that Namikaze's attack had formed. Morpheus sliced through the spears of magic energy and then sent forth a cloud of black smoke at Namikaze. The white-eyed Dragonslayer eyed the smoke as he found images of Wendy Marvell, his student and little sister figure, appearing out of nowhere. "Do not taunt me with images of her," Namikaze roared and sped towards the bleeding dragon. "You cowardly reptile, how dare you use my imouto against me?" A powerful punch slammed against Morpheus. Uzumaki flew towards the dragon and kicked him in the throat. "And don't ever use Catalina Ne-chan in the way you had done before." Uzumaki then spun and sent a double tail strike to Morpheus's chest before Dragonslayer magic fused with demon chakra in the boy's throat. Miiryu no Hoko. The blast impacted harshly with Morpheus's stomach and sent him backwards through the portal. A flurry of blows then descended upon him as Namikaze and Uzumaki landed kick after kick, punch after punch, against his scaled body. Despite the scales of a dragon being extremely dense and powerful, the two Dragonslayers were beginning to crack them and break pieces of them off from how they bombarded their adversary with attack. Uzumaki crashed two clawed fists against the sides of Morpheus's head and discombobulated him, and a swift upward kick from Namikaze sent the dragon's head snapping upwards. Namikaze then spun and the talons of the Apocalypse Dragon slammed into the bloody chest of the Phantasm Dragon. Morpheus's eyes widened as he felt the glob of blood exit out of his mouth, staining his teeth crimson. A double palm strike from the older Naruto came after before Uzumaki came down with an axe kick to the skull. With a roar, Morpheus unfurled his wings and stopped both his assailants. "Enough, you two have annoyed me for the last time. I will send you both back to the distortion zone where you will never escape." He grabbed them both in his claws and then planted them against the side of the portal. Magic energy bled from the portal and Morpheus began to spin and fly along the tunnel's length at a high speed. The time-space portal became a blur around the three. Uzumaki, even with his protective cloak, and Namikaze began to feel their skin beginning to rip and tear from the speeds they were going at, alongside the fact that they were creating friction with a temporal and spatial anomaly. After seeing the light of the portal's original entrance, he stopped and then reared his forelimbs backwards and hurled both Narutos and sent them tumbling through the air towards the entrance of the portal. Taking a deep breath, a blast of violet energy escaped Morpheus's jaws and clashed with both blonde Dragonslayers. A roar of agony met Morpheus's ears as he watched the two be sent back to the outer realm by his attack. "Like hell. We are going to leave without you," Namikaze snarled, panting heavily. "Futon. Shinku." He held out his hands and suddenly a powerful suctional force formed. Morpheus's eyes widened as he realized he was being pulled towards the portal's entrance by Namikaze's vacuum winds. Uzumaki decided to lend a helping hand, too actually. The two demonic claws of chakra lashed out and grabbed onto Morpheus's body and the jinchuriki pulled harshly. The nightmare dragon flapped his wings heavily. The powerful vacuum winds acted to keep Morpheus stationary while Uzumaki reeled the reptile in as if he were a giant fish. As the two continued to try and lure their prey in, something occurred to them both. "He is going to eventually break free," Uzumaki stated. "True." Namikaze's eyes gained a much more calculating gaze as the shine in his white eyes dulled a bit. As his human intellect came into play and numerous plans raced through his head until one came to be the most likely to work: let him go. "What?" Uzumaki exclaimed. "You heard me, brat. Let the dragon go." Uzumaki stared at his doppelganger and glanced back and forth between the Morpheus and Namikaze. The crimson-eyed Jinchuriki then noticed a twitch of Namikaze's right hand and a swirl of magic energy flowing into it. "Ah, you understand?" Uzumaki nodded. "Aim for the middle of the back, specifically the 50th thoracic vertebra of the spinal column." That area will allow for maximum thrust when you strike, as the body will fold and allow for less resistance from the air generated by the strike. Namikaze nodded, and then as soon as he vanished from view, Uzumaki let go. The winds stopped and Morpheus found himself free of the chakra bindings. Due to the sudden release, Morpheus felt himself rolling through the portal. Morpheus quickly regained his bearings and turned around, smiling toothily at the mouth of the portal that he was so dangerously getting closer to. Foolish humans. None can hold back the might of a dragon. However, before Morpheus could spin around as he was being carried by the current of the spacetime portal, a gust of wind flew past him. Despite the high speeds at which he moved it, Morpheus still managed to see the blonde Dragonslayer's form as he sped past him. Namikaze's hand was wrapped with slicing winds and Morpheus roared in pain as the unexpected strike sliced into the flesh of his eye. A roar escaped his throat and the crimson glow in the right orb died down as blood flowed from it. As Morpheus clutched bleeding eye, Namikaze continued past his opponent and stopped at the middle of the dragon's back. The 50th thoracic vertebra, he thought. He held up his hand and the Rasengan he had already prepared grew larger. The Rasengan Gyodama Rasengan and 3 smaller Rasengans orbited the larger one like the moons around a planet. Morpheus's eyes widened when he glanced back with his remaining eye to see Namikaze holding one of the most powerful forms of his Rasengan to have ever been created. The loud sounds of swirling energy echoed throughout the space-time portal. Morpheus curled into a ball and spun before unfurling his wings to generate a powerful gust of wind to throw off his opponent, but Namikaze manipulated the winds. After all, he wasn't called the Ogo no Fujin for nothing. The winds became a slipstream for him and now his form vanished in a sonic boom. Morpheus's eyes widened once more as Namikaze appeared in front of his chest. Glowing white eyes shone brightly as Dragonslayer magic infused itself with the swirling orbs of energy. Energy make. Wakusei Rasengan, Planetary Rasengan. Namikaze plunged the attack into his opponent's back and the Dragonslayer magic coupled with the grenading effect of 4 different Rasengan strikes broke through the scales and spines that lay on Morpheus's back. A gargantuan twister of magic energy was the final result of the powerful energy make attack, and Morpheus then found himself spiraling through the air and slamming down into the sands of the Outer Realm's infinite desert once more. Morpheus's eye widened as he clenched his claws and watched the ebony sand trickle through them. His body trembled as he glanced up and saw Uzumaki and Namikaze, both panting heavily as they hovered in the air outside the tear in the space-time continuum. Their clothes and skin were torn in numerous places, but the looks of superiority in their eyes as they looked down on him served to piss off the Nightmare Dragon to an even greater degree. I was inside the space-time continuum. I was closer to freedom than I ever thought I could be in now. The cause of my freedom is the reason for preventing it. Morpheus's lone eye glanced between the 2 Narutos and his gaze hardened as he felt the blood flow from his numerous wounds, particularly the ones from his chest and now ruined eyeball. You little insects have interfered far too much with my plans. I was the one who brought you here to free me, and now you are the ones who will spend an eternity in purgatory and live throughout the rest of your lives in this separate dimension, and there is no one, not even you two, who can stop me. Namikaze and Uzumaki stared with wide eyes as they watched the phantom dragon's form rise up to meet their own. The massive dragon's form enveloped them in its shadow, and suddenly, they felt a twinge of nervousness as they watched the red-eyed reptile gaze down at them. The seriousness and killing intent that poured from the dragon's very presence was enough to make the 2 Dragonslayers release a bead of sweat that traveled down the side of their faces. Morpheus growled as his large form suddenly changed from dark violet to pitch black. His lone crimson eye pierced the blackness as its glow intensified until it was outright shining like a star in the night sky. The powers of darkness and nightmares engulfed the dragon as his powers were now truly unleashed. Insert music. Guilty Crown Hill of Sorrow. You have denied me my right to freedom for the last time. Now die. Both Narutos could only stare in shock as Morpheus's power increased exponentially, and then they were struck by a mighty blast of darkness energy. The 2 Narutos rocketed into the ebony sands below and continued to push along it as Morpheus directed the blast onto their bodies. The 2 blonde Dragonslayers were then caught up in the eventual explosion as they met a large sand dune. The large mushroom cloud died down as Morpheus flew into the mushroom cloud, parting it with a few flaps of his wings. Below him, Uzumaki and Namikaze were wiping the blood that flowed from their damaged skulls. Uzumaki and Namikaze felt their broken bodies heal due to their healing factors, but the fatigue from fighting the Dragon of Phantasms would take longer to leave their bodies. A mighty roar from above sent a pulse of dark energy towards them. The 2 Dragonslayers ate the magic energy, but soon found their faces planted into the sands once more as Morpheus dropped down onto their bodies. While Uzumaki's chakra cloak acted as a makeshift barrier that prevented Morpheus's claws from sinking into his stomach, Namikaze was forced into a position where he had to use his physical strength to hold back the dragon's talon. His arms trembled as the sharp talon hovered a few inches over his abdominal area. His white eyes then glanced up at the red-eyed dragon, and then he charged energy into his maw. Morpheus snarled as he felt the magic energy build up within his opponent's body and quickly acted to stop it. Not this time, human. Morpheus growled as he slammed his forelimb down on Namikaze's body, aiming to crush his head. While the intended outcome did not occur, the attack did stop Namikaze's roar attack, and soon Namikaze found himself rolling through the black sands of the distortion world when Morpheus slashed at him. Morpheus turned to Uzumaki, who tried to use his 2 tails worth of chakra to free himself, even bonding the Dragonslayer magic to it as a way to escape, but the weight of the gargantuan reptile could not be removed. Uzumaki then saw Morpheus raise his foot and was about to crash it back down on him. Uzumaki rolled aside, and the shockwave generated by the assaulting limb sent a cloud of sand and a gust of wind towards Uzumaki. The jinchuriki found himself skidding backwards along the sands, but before he could even react, Morpheus had already wrapped his spiny tail around his fox-cloaked body. Morpheus chuckled as he repeatedly crashed his opponent into the sands. A tower of black sand then formed as Namikaze rose up from his location and flew towards his opponent. Morpheus swung Uzumaki a few times around with his tail before releasing his captive. Uzumaki flew through the air, but Namikaze immediately latched onto his doppelganger, and Morpheus's crimson eyes widened as Namikaze used the momentum behind his movement and Uzumaki's flying form to spin and throw the younger Naruto back at him. Morpheus snarled as he watched Uzumaki aim to slash at him with his claws, but Morpheus easily crushed the blonde beneath his claws before breathing out a plume of black mist. Namikaze flew forth and spun like a drill. Futon. Tatsumaki. The tornado sprung to life as the wind swirled around his person. The black mist that brought about the formation of nightmares dissolved into the winds, and Morpheus roared as he sent a pulse of darkness at his opponent. Namikaze held out his arms as black and dark blue magic encased them. Mokashiryu no Habitaki. The older Dragonslayer flapped the wings of energy, and mighty burst of magic clashed with the pulse that Morpheus released. The shockwave caused by the resulting clash of energy sent Namikaze skidding backwards slightly through the air. He quickly slashed at the air, and an arc of black and blue energy sped through the air. Morpheus turned aside and his wing took the blow. Not even a scratch formed on the now onyx-colored dragon. Suddenly, the dragon found himself teetering a bit to the side as his balance was thrown off. Uzumaki threw aside the limb that had been pinning him down before dropping down on all fours. His body's tolerance for the yokai had died down, and so he recalled Kurama's chakra and replaced it with the magic Agnologia had bestowed upon him. Bending his limbs, he leapt towards the dragon. Morpheus's head snapped to the right and then to the left as both fists of the young Dragonslayer slammed against the sides of his skull. Uzumaki then leapt into the air and flapped his wings as he spread them outwards. He rocketed straight up before going into a loop-de-loop to build up momentum. A loud boom echoed through the air as Uzumaki broke the sound barrier, and Namikaze decided to give his young counterpart a boost as he sent a powerful gust of wind at him. The tailwind flung Uzumaki forward and the Joe Morpheus's blood-coated chest. Despite the dragon's healing factor having stopped the bleeding and regrew his scales and flesh, the fact remained that that particular area of his chest had now become a weak spot that the 2 Dragonslayers chose to exploit. Miiryu no Kokenden. Uzumaki released a roar as Dragonslayer magic coated his body like a casing would around a bullet and made the blonde appear as if he were a flaming meteor streaking towards its target. Time seemed to slow down as Uzumaki's body crashed against Morpheus's chest, and a powerful explosion resulted that caused Morpheus to have to dig his claws into the sands to prevent himself from being sent backwards. Though the dragon's scales had proved to be quite durable, the force carried through to the dragon's internal body structure, and a small amount of blood flew forth from the dragon's mouth. Miiryu no Sume. Uzumaki then twisted and crashed a powerful kick to Morpheus, and the dragon skidded backwards from the force only for Namikaze to speed past the younger Dragonslayer with a dual strike with magic that was in the shape of Agnologia's head, jaws apart. Mokashiryu no Kuroi Kiba. Namikaze slammed the strike into Morpheus's body, and the dragon grunted as the sharp fangs pierced through his scales and punctured the flesh beneath them. The nightmare dragon countered by slamming his claws down upon the 2 Dragonslayers, and before they even met the sands, the dragon's tails crashed into their bodies. Morpheus spread his wings and flew after the 2 as they tumbled through the air. In a burst of sand, Morpheus was already upon the 2 blondes, and he immediately grabbed them and dragged them through the sands, and he continued to fly through the air. 2 large trenches trailed behind the dragon as he continued to pull his adversaries through the sands before he tossed them in the air. The 2 spun, and suddenly shadows encompassed them as Morpheus controlled them with his powers. The shadows morphed themselves into large serpents, jaws wide to swallow their prey. Before the jaws could clamp down on the 2 Dragonslayers, they quickly managed to position themselves so that their feet planted themselves on the lower jaws of the shadow serpents while they gripped the teeth of the upper jaws tightly. The jaws trembled as the 2 Narutos held back the shadow serpents from swallowing them alive. With a pulse of magic energy, the 2 freed themselves from the serpents, but they were both grabbed by Morpheus, and the dragon slammed them against each other. They quickly pushed off against each other and sent a double kick to the dragon's chest, but Morpheus dodged the attack before flying off. Uzumaki followed directly behind the ebony reptile while Namikaze quickly went to cut him off. Morpheus watched with his single eye as both Dragonslayers neared him and hovered in the air as he flapped his wings. Watching both Dragonslayers near him at their highest possible speeds, the dragon chuckled before flapping his wings violently to push himself upwards. The two Narutos had their eyes wide when they saw their respective doppelganger in front of them instead of the nightmare dragon, and they slammed into each other. The two grunted as they held their pained bodies, but then they were sent crashing to the ground as Morpheus slammed his tail down on their bodies. A large blast of shadow energy accelerated their descent. Two craters formed from the impact, but they were quick to go with the fall and roll out of the way as Morpheus sped down and slammed his entire weight onto their previous locations. The force of Morpheus's crash was enough to generate a shockwave that sent them both skidding backwards, but then two beams of pure violet-black magic energy were sent towards them. The two Dragonslayers swallowed the energy, but then two pillars of shadow sprouted from the sands beneath their feet. The two Dragonslayers released cries of pain as their bodies registered the damage they took. The two Narutos fell forward onto their hands and knees, panting heavily from the powerful attack only for a large violet-black light to flood their vision. Taking advantage of their downed forms, Morpheus had chosen that time to unleash a devastating blast of magic energy at his opponents. With no time to react, the two Dragonslayers could only stare in awe as the attack washed over their bodies. The beam of energy continued to speed across the sands and a large dome of energy expanded outwards from the impact the attack made with the black sands. The violet dome of energy gained a crimson tint as the red moon in the sky cast its light down on the dome. The attack's shockwave were nothing less than cataclysmic in nature as the gusts, winds and dust clouds generated were quite powerful and large, respectively. Morpheus watched for a few moments at the area where his blast had crashed into the sands. He waited for the two Dragonslayers to emerge and then gave a toothy grin of satisfaction when he saw no movement. With a nod, the ebony-scaled nightmare dragon spread his wings and took off towards the portal in the sky that led to the space-time continuum. Morpheus's grin grew wider with every flap of his wings, drawing closer and closer to the portal. Insert music. Q Factory Final Reckoning, Apocalypse DORAIBU. The sound of both Naruto's voices rang throughout the air and Morpheus's crimson eye widened in shock before a powerful impact crashed into his skull. The dragon spiraled down to the sands and a large crater formed with the collision. The unleashed form of the nightmare dragon snarled as he glared at his opponents, but his widened when he saw their new appearances. Both blondes had lost their shirts and cloaks in the blast of Morpheus's attack and their pants were torn and missing both legs, but their boots managed to remain intact. However, it wasn't the state of their clothing that the dragon was interested in, it was the fact that both now had appearances akin to that of a dragon's. Their skin was now a shade of black that was even darker than the sands he lay in, blue flame-like markings covering their now blackened bodies. The scales that covered their bodies gained a crimson tint as the moon cast its light down on them. Their eyes shone an even brighter shade of white, their hair was wilder, their claws and teeth were also much sharper. Uzumaki's wings bore a greater resemblance to his draconian father's wings and Namikaze's hair now bore black and blue streaks that took on the appearance of Agnologia's horns. "Impossible! You survived?" Morpheus exclaimed as he rose back to his full height. Neither blonde responded and merely blurred out of existence. Morpheus's eyes widened as he felt the dual impact of the Dragonslayer's fists against the side of his body. With the power of drive mode, the two punched with enough force to break the draconian behemoth's ribs and, though not completely shattering them, the scales surrounding that area broke and cracked in various places. Uzumaki flapped his wings and gripped his adversary tightly with his clawed hands and began to drag Morpheus through the sands like he had done to them both earlier. Morpheus sputtered as he spat out the black grains from his mouth before he slammed mercilessly into the sands with tremendous force. Uzumaki flapped his wings and carried the heavyweight dragon into the air and flipped in the air so that Morpheus was swung overhead and thrown across to Namikaze's waiting form. Namikaze flew forth and delivered a brutal strike and Morpheus's eyes widened as he felt the arm pierce through his scales, underlying skin, muscle and bone. Morpheus roared in pain as the assaulting limb had torn through his pelvis and reached straight into his small intestine. Namikaze's magic-encased arm felt like it was made of fire as the flame-like energy burned the duodenum. Removing the limb, Namikaze then gripped the spiny tail of the previously violet, now black-scaled dragon and pulled him towards his body. Morpheus then felt another impact within his body as Namikaze tore through the left lung. Namikaze swung the dragon around by the tail before throwing him down into the sands. Morpheus grunted only to release a loud roar as Namikaze and Uzumaki dove down from above, dropping like pins. Their powerful kicks, enhanced by the forces of gravity, allowed them to crash into the dragon's downed body and the nightmare dragon now had his right lung punctured by several of his ribs. Blood pooled in the dragon's mouth and his right eye glanced at the two Dragonslayers when they stood atop his cheekbone. Namikaze stared into the crimson eye of the dragon with his own draconian eyes. Mokashiryu no Byakugan. The white eyes of the Apocalypse Dragon stared into the very soul of the Nightmare Dragon, and Namikaze looked through the dragon's mind before nodding as he found the information he sought. What are you? Morpheus gurgled as the blood bubbled in his throat from his act of speaking. Namikaze and Uzumaki nodded to each other, and Namikaze summoned forth Excalibur and Ascalon, the blades of Merlin and the Dragon Killer blades. Uzumaki hovered in the air as Namikaze twirled the blades. With a snarl, the older blonde answered the dying dragon's question. Dragonslayers. And with the sickening sound of a blade slicing through flesh, Namikaze beheaded the mighty dragon with Excalibur before plunging Ascalon into the remainder of the Dragon of Phantasm's body. The silver flames rushed across the body like it were covered in oil. Both blondes deactivated their drive modes and their bodies returned to their original states. They watched as in a matter of minutes the body of the behemoth was reduced to ash and nothing more. The ash lay atop a sheet of black glass. Uzumaki held two of the large claws of the once Lord of Phantasms, and Namikaze opened up his pocket dimension and tossed the head of the dead dragon into it. Spoils of war and all that. We best hurry, old man. With Morpheus's magic no longer being supplied to keep the portal open, it is beginning to close on us. Namikaze nodded as he resealed Ascalon and Excalibur into the seals on his wrists before he and his younger counterpart flew into the air. The portal quickly began to decrease in diameter, and with a burst of speed, the two barely managed to squeeze through it before it completely closed off. Unknown location, Spacetime Continuum. Uzumaki and Namikaze flowed along the current of the spacetime portal, glancing along the sides and watching the windows, which allowed them to gaze briefly into the other worlds that existed within the multiverse. I must admit, Namikaze spoke, the sheer amount of worlds which exist within this eternal universe is astounding. Now the question is, how long will it take before we actually find our worlds? Not long. Before we killed Morpheus, I had managed to read into his mind using the Mokashiryu no Byakugan, and I found the dimensional coordinates of our two respective worlds, as Morpheus would have had to have some form of pinpointing our exact locations in order to bring us to the distortion world. Interesting, Uzumaki muttered. So that would actually explain how you recovered your swords from Morpheus even though he sealed them away from you in that portal. Namikaze nodded. Yes. Gaining the information allowed me access to the Corridor of Darkness, and so I was capable of reclaiming Ascalon and Excalibur, and thus they are once again in my possession. The two Dragonslayers remained silent as they continued to flow along the portal in space-time before making hand motions and clapping his hands together. The dimensions of space and time responded, and the two blondes were now hovering within the portal. Two images appeared before them, the images of their respective worlds. It seems we have arrived at our respective worlds, Uzumaki stated. Picking up upon the worlds we belong to among the 26 planes of space-time is no easy feat, brat. I expect a response of gratitude towards me, Namikaze said. I owe you a debt of gratitude? I think not, old man. If anything, you should be owing me, for if it weren't for my knowledge on the distortion world, Morpheus and many other elements regarding this particular situation, you would have easily perished. How dare you respond to your better in such a manner? I have no betters. I am a Dragonslayer, and so am I, hatchling. The two Narutos butted heads once more, anime lightning passing between their eyes. However, after a few moments of glaring, they stopped and then backed away from another with a sigh, leaving both their lips simultaneously. They clasped hands and shook firmly. You have a long way to go, brat. You are a strong Dragonslayer that is worthy of holding the title of being the son of Agnologia, but your temper and your inexperience is what keeps you from attaining true combat prowess. Your usage of this chakra energy, seeing as how you appear to be the only one from your realm to possess this type of energy, it would be best you learn techniques or at least harness the power. Kurama is sealed within you. All 9 tails of pure power. Learn to use it and gain control over the power, for it was shown in our fight against Morpheus that you cling to your instincts in that chakra-cloaked mode of yours. Your strength is significant, and I believe you have done your world's Agnologia proud. However, your mental disability places you at a major disadvantage, which I am sure you are aware of. Despite the fact that your power is most likely unhindered when in its draconian primal state, it is best you mend your psyche. Your dragon half strikes wildly and does not have the mind that your human half has in order to guide that power. Power is great, but unless you can control it, it is best you not have it at all. The two Narutos nodded to each other as they took note of their notes of advice towards the other, and with that they stepped in front of their respective world portals. They glanced at each other one last time and bumped fists. Old man. Brat. And with that they entered their portals, and in a flash of blue light, they exited the space-time continuum and returned to their respective worlds among the multiverse. Eastern Mountain Range, Fury, Dragonslayer Universe. A blue portal opened up in the sky, and the grass and leaves of the trees began to bend back from the winds the rip in spacetime generated. Naruto dropped down from above and landed in a crouch on the grass. As soon as he touched the grass, the portal that led to the spacetime continuum closed shut, never to be seen again. Naruto glanced up at the clouds as they lazily drifted through the air. Capable of alerting even my own senses, so keep sharp, Naruto. Naruto turned to see his exceed partner continuing a sentence. Ah, that's right. I was taken by Morpheus before Kurama could even finish. The blonde's eyes narrowed. So that means that despite the amount of time that passed in the distortion world, not even a fraction of a second had passed here. Kurama, the presence is gone, Naruto said. Kurama blinked as he turned to the Dragonslayer. What are you? But it was just here. How it could have possibly left without my senses having picked up on it? Kurama glared at the blonde. Naruto, what happened? It would be too troublesome to explain, Kurama. Now come, we must return to the castle headquarters. Kurama watched the retreating back of his partner before latching onto his head, and the two vanished in a flicker of movement. In a matter of minutes, the two returned to the castle that was once Jose Porla's Phantom Lord Guildhouse and now belonged to Naruto as his spy network's main HQ. Naruto entered through the main doors and headed for the third floor where his and Kurama's room lay. After entering the room, Kurama settled onto his red velvet pillow to take a nap. Naruto sat on swiveling leather chair before sighing. He closed his eyes and then he snapped them open. The white void of his mindscape welcomed him with the soft red glow of the 5-point elemental. Minato and Kushina's spirits rose up from the floor of the mindscape, their son. Naru-chan, you really came. I promised I would come back and I did. Now then, we have much to discuss, and the first thing on my agenda is what I found in Morpheus's mind. When I extracted the information on how to return to my dimension, I also went through the memories regarding his time in Algesia. I found out there is a way to reach from Earthland to the realm of the heavens above, to the realm of dragons. As former members of the 10 Wizard Saints, you too should know about this, so tell me about the gateway. Naruto paused before looking straight into their eyes, his sapphire orbs flickering white to emphasize his serious demeanor. What is the Eclipse Gate? Naruto's Mindscape, Spy Network HQ, Eastern Fiorean Mountains, Fury. The Eclipse Gate? Kushina and Minato stared at their son with shock written across their faces. Naruto nodded his head. Yes. What is it? Morpheus's memories could only show so much, and all I learned was that it was a gateway that led from Earthland to Algesia, the realm of the dragons, but I need to know more. Naru-chan, before we choose to tell you. Kushina began to speak, but found herself interrupted by her son's harsh voice. You have no choice in this matter. You either tell me willingly or I force it out of you both, Naruto snarled. We will tell you what we know of the Eclipse Gate, but like your mother was about to ask, are you sure you want to carry out this escapade of yours? Minato asked. Naruto raised an eyebrow at his biological father to personify his confusion. What do you refer to? I have many escapades planned out, so I will require specification. Minato's eyes narrowed in annoyance. Obviously, son, the only escapade you have planned which involves the dragons. The one where you plan to wage war against the Dragon King himself alongside Agnologia. You do know that despite having a dragon on your side, you two alone cannot take down an entire civilization. I am aware of that, which is why I have plans to travel across Earthland's landscape and do what I can to form an army of my own. Tu-san can handle himself as he is one of the 4 divine dragons and I am his Dragonslayer. I will be fine. So to answer yours and my mother's questions, yes, I do plan to wage war on Algesia and kill the Dragon King so Tu-san can reclaim the throne he so rightfully deserves. Naruto stared into his father's equally blue eyes. Naruto. Waging war on the most powerful creatures to ever walk the face of Earthland is practically, if not entirely, suicide, Kushina exclaimed. I've gone by many years without your instructions, and though I can truly call you my parents with pride, I can do well on my own. Naruto looked into his mother's worried gray eyes and gave her a soft smile. Your genuine worry for me is touching. He patted his much shorter mother on the head. But I've made my own decisions and I swore an oath of the dragon that I would aid Tu-san in his eventual battle with the Dragon King. Trust me. I know what I'm doing. Minato and Kushina bit their lips to prevent themselves from going against their son's plans, but he was right. He had lived for an equivalent of 110 years and made his own decisions for most of his life, and despite him being an SS-class criminal by the Magic Council, the young man had proven many a time that he could manage on his own. My baby's so grown up now. Oh, how I wish we could just go back in time and raise him. Kushina smiled at the thought. She looked up at her son and both she and Minato nodded. You're right, son. You have done well on your own, albeit you gained yourself a criminal record, but well nonetheless, Minato said. Naruto gave a nod of acceptance to his biological father and mother. Now tell me, what is the Eclipse Gate? With his serious demeanor now in place once more, the Ogono Fujin's parents mimicked their son's seriousness. Now Naru-chan, the Eclipse Gate is something that was created during the ancient times of Earthland. How ancient? During the era of Camelot or after? Naruto asked. After, was Kushina's immediate reply. The Eclipse Gate was inspected and many historians who examined the gate dated its creation to be almost 400 years ago. That being said, the Eclipse Gate was said to have been created during the era of Zeref, and some even made the hypothesis that Zeref himself created the contraption. As its two strongest members, Minato-kun and I were to act as representatives for the 10 wizard saints, and so we were personally escorted by the King of Fury himself, Tomoe Fury, to see the Eclipse Gate. The Eclipse Gate was found to be recorded in the Book of Zareth, created by the Black Mage's followers after his alleged death 400 years ago. In the book, it is described as being a gateway into the space-time continuum, allowing one to travel through time. So it's a glorified time machine? Naruto simplified. In layman's terms, yes, you could call it a glorified time machine. Minato agreed. However, the Eclipse Gate was created with certain mechanisms. These mechanisms include that in order to use the gate, a large amount of magical energy in the form of pure eternano would have to be stored within the gate's energy cores in order to power it, and the greater the amount of magic, the further back or forward you can choose to go. The second mechanism is that the gate can only be activated during a specific astrological event, a time in which the sun and moon intersect. The sun and moon only meet with each other during the times when solar eclipses occur. The solar eclipse itself would be when the moon itself covers the sun, so the point at which the sun and moon intersect would be during the beginnings of a solar eclipse. Naruto deduced. Yes. During the joining of the sun and the moon, eternano in our atmosphere gains mystical properties as light and darkness meeting one another does tend to have certain effects. The final mechanism for the gate's activation is quite a unique one, and one where you will most likely have to ally yourself with a celestial spirit mage in order to pull it off, for you see the 12 golden keys of the zodiac are required to open the gate when need be. Naruto's eyes widened as Minato's words before a disgusted look replaced a surprise. Unacceptable. Fairy Tail and Oracion Cease are the only mages with celestial spirits, and I'd rather spit on the claws of the Dragon King than use that pitiful form of magic, Naruto roared. Naruto, it cannot be opened any other way, Minato assured him. Then how did Zareth open it? I highly doubt Zareth possessed the 12 keys. We cannot answer that because we do not know, Naru-chan. However, thanks to your encounter with Morpheus in the Outer Realm, we now know that the gate is actually the gateway to Algesia and not a time machine. Perhaps with this knowledge and the knowledge we have given you, you can come to a logical way as to how you can accomplish your goals. Kushina said. She then took her child's hand in her own and patted it lightly. Besides, you will not be having to open the gate anytime soon. After all, you need to gain an army before you can go take on the dragons. As true as that may be, it's just that I cannot come to terms with this. Celestial spirits are so dependent on their users for strength, as when one makes a contract with the spirits, their strength becomes directly proportional to the strength of the user. I have fought both Lucy Heartfilia of Fairy Tail and that white-haired girl from Oracion, and both were weak, and Kurama can literally wipe the floor with their spirits. Naruto sighed. Are you confident in this information? Are you absolutely sure there is no other way to actually open the Eclipse Gate? Yes, Naruto, was Minato's immediate reply. Kuso. Insert music. Naruto Shippuden, man of the world. A moment of silence passed between the three. Minato and Kushina glanced at each other, fidgeting nervously as they watched their son organize his thoughts. Kushina and Minato would have spoken to him, but they had no topic of conversation. I mean, what would you talk about with a child who practically despised you for the entirety of his childhood and most of his adult life? After a few more moments of silence, Naruto raised his head and looked at his parents, staring directly into their eyes. I made a promise that I would do what I could to make amends with you both after what happened in the Outer Realm, so I think it is about time I carry out that task. So, my first act would be to thank you both. Thank us? The two parents blinked in owlishly in confusion. Naruto nodded and he glanced down at the empty space of the void of his mindscape. Tu-san has taught me much, Rieger Dragon, and one thing he taught me was that a dragon always repays those that have done it kindness. Despite all that I have done to you both, spiting you, despising you, disregarding you as my parents, you still saw me as your son. You kept your hearts strong and continued to show me the feelings that parents would show their child. Even after everything I've said and done, you still call me your son and have even shown me forgiveness for my actions. I thank you both, Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki Namikaze. Naruto flinched as his body went to make a motion, his leg muscles trembling lightly. Swallowing audibly, Naruto continued through with the motion he had wished to carry out. Minato and Kushina stared with wide eyes as they saw Naruto go down on bended knee. He bent his right arm at an angle so that his closed fist was placed against his left shoulder, and he lowered his head. This goes against everything that a dragon knows, and so I swallow my pride and I kneel before you both to humbly ask for the proper forgiveness that I, in my own opinion, do not so righteously deserve from you. Minato and Kushina looked to each other and walked up to their son. Kushina placed her hand beneath Naruto's chin and raised it so that he was now looking directly at her. No child of a dragon, and surely no child of mine, should bow their head to anyone. The Uzumaki blood in you should have you know that, my son. Kushina smiled warmly at him. But, Minato cut off the kneeling Dragonslayer before he could even finish his sentence. We forgave you a long time ago, Naruto. We are all at fault for how you turned out. Your mother and I died on you and you took everything Acknowledgia said about humans to heart. You are our son, Naruto, do not forget that, and so it with that I tell you to raise your head and rise up. No son of two wizard saints should be on bended knee for anyone, not even us. Naruto glanced down at the ground and his bangs shadowed his eyes. You are both too forgiving, he stated. Kushina shook her head before wrapping her arms around her son's body. Naruto flinched significantly in his mother's embrace and Minato deftly rested his hand on the Dragonslayer's head. And you are beating yourself up too much about it. There are things you have done that we are no proud of, and there are things that you have done that have made us extremely proud of you. You have protected and you have killed, but then again what mage hasn't? Don't worry, Naruto, we're here for you. But mostly me because I'm your badass father. Minato-kun, stop trying to goad our son into picking favorites, Kushina snarled, her hair rising up into their trademark 9 tails, whenever she was angry. But we all know Naru-chan knows that his Ka-chan will be there for him all the time, unlike his, mostly me, 2-chan. Naruto remained silent and he refused to raise his head, he refused to even move. The thoughts rushed through his mind at a mile a minute and he couldn't even bring himself to conjure a response even when it all ended. Seiko Haruno, Sakura's mother, had been the closest thing to a mother he would have ever had in Acknowledgia himself, despite thrusting the tough love attitude at him, would forever be seen as the father who made him into the man he was, but he never truly had the ability to receive the love of his biological parents. The force that coiled itself around his heart began to squeeze and he gritted his teeth as he felt the pressure. He took a deep breath to try and remove the feeling, but the action merely dulled it. Naruto shook his head before pushing away his parents and he rose to his feet, a snarl decorating his once emotionless features. What is this? What have you done to me? Naruto shouted. You embraced me and now there's this tightened in my chest. What have you done? Why won't it stop? Why can't I look at you both anymore without feeling this constricting feeling around my heart? Your regret and your guilt for what you've unconsciously felt towards us. You're growing up as a human being, Naru-chan. No, I don't like it. Minato and Kushina had to stop themselves from laughing at how childish Naruto sounded when he said that. I hate this feeling and god damn it, it's not fucking going away. I have committed acts that would have me feel those two exact feelings and yet now they choose to surface because of you. Naruto, it's okay. Shush, it's okay. Kushina tried to calm her son as if he were an angry child, but Naruto would have none of it. Don't come any closer. Just leave me be, he cried out, but Kushina ignored the cries and continued to stalk towards her son. When she stood directly in front of him, the young man was now trembling. He continued to do so as Kushina cupped his face with her hands. Ha, you really are your father's child, but you seem to have my face. Good, at least you don't look flaky like he did as a child. Flaky? Minato mumbled with a twitch of his eye. Why? Both parents watched their son with confused looks on their faces. The young man's face was now one of confusion mixed with fright. Why do I feel this way? Why won't it stop? Why? Why can't you just hate me like I expected you to? Why? By the dragons. Damn it. Damn it. Damn it all to hell. Why? Naruto dropped down to his knees and slammed his fists down on the floor of his mindscape. We can't hate you, Naruto. Like I said before, you may done things we aren't proud of and you may have practically hated us for most of your life. Minato said that part with a joking manner, but Kushina's glare told him now was not the time for jokes. Minato sighed before ruffling his son's hair. But the reason we can't hate you is because you are our son. After everything you've done, you are still able to find the strength to keep fighting, to keep yourself from going too far. You have grown up and regained humanity within your spirit. You have become a strong, confident and intelligent young man that is, in our opinion, the epitome of what any parent would wish for their child. You have done your mother and I proud, Naruto. No matter what you do and no matter how it is done, we will hope that you can find it in you so that you will be able to make the right decision. We love you and we believe in you, Naru-chan. Naruto looked up at his parents' smiling faces. Emotion clouded his field of vision in the form of tears that threatened to spill, but he quickly wiped them away with the side of his arm and he released a choked laugh from his throat. He then uttered the words that the red-haired woman and blonde-haired man would have never thought to have heard come from the Dragonslayer's lips. Thank you. 2-chan. Ka-chan. The two wizard saints felt as if those words had made an impact with them and they stumbled back slightly. They looked at each other and then back at their son before nodding to the blonde Dragonslayer of Acknowledgia. The two then placed a hand on one of his shoulders, Kushina's right hand on his left shoulder and Minato's left hand on his right shoulder, and they kissed his head. With that final act, the display of affection for their child, the blonde suddenly found himself thrust from his mindscape and he shook his head rapidly from the rush. He looked around and found Kurama about to fly over to him. Oi, Naruto. The blonde looked up at his exceed partner and nodded in acknowledgement to him. You fell asleep so I didn't want to wake you, but while you were resting I received a message from the spy team we sent to a Caliphate town. A serious expression came upon Naruto's face as he looked at the kitsune costume cat, and Kurama's own seriousness reflected in his crimson irises as they the Dragonslayer's own sapphire orbs. They seem to have spotted a person that they believed would be interesting to us. Who is this person? They don't know who the person is, but they sent an image they took with a photo lacrima through the teleportation seals you have them. Kurama flew over to his soft velvet pillow which he had dubbed picked up the shining teal lacrima that lay atop the pillow. He dropped the lacrima in Naruto's hands before dropping down softly atop Naruto's head. Naruto placed a small amount of magic energy into the lacrima and a holographic image of the person his spy team had found so interesting appeared before him and Kurama. The person was a blonde-haired woman who appeared to be around a height of 5 feet, 7 inches. The woman had long, straight, blonde, hair bound with taut bandages and dark eyes. She wore a short-sleeved black and purple blouse and black pants, both of which had a design similar to clouds on them, purple fingerless gloves and a chain of white beads wound around her left hand. She wore bandages around her arms and legs, mostly for aesthetics Naruto presumed, and had a red belt around her waist. However, next to her popped up a second image. This was the image that caught Naruto's eye as his focus shifted to the second image that showed up next to the woman's. An exceed with blue-colored fur that was patterned with black marking akin to that of flames. The exceed's eyes were of different colors, the left eye being green and the right eye being yellow. White wings stretched from the exceed's back which also bore the flame-like markings on the feathers. "Someone you know?" Naruto asked. "Yes, that is my second sister and the second youngest of us 9. Her name is Matabi and despite her full power being limited to only 2 taels worth she is not to be trifled with. Her pyrokinetic abilities rival if not exceed my own and she is capable of using hellfire. A flame that even I cannot ingest. She can also use her magic to temporarily revive the spirits of the deceased. So she can utilize a form of living magic. No living magic is completely different. Living magic gifts life into things that would normally not be categorized as living, stones, trees and leaves among other things. Matabi-chan on the other hand, I guess you can say she has the abilities of the mythological Bakaneko, a suitable comparison seeing as how her demonic form is that of a monstrous cat. Who her human companion is, I do not know, but given the trend of Dragonslayers having exceed partners, it wouldn't be incorrect to assume that the woman may be a Dragonslayer herself. Naruto stared at the 2 images for a minute before canceling his magic to the photo lacrima. He rose to his feet without a word and exited his and Kurama's quarters. The exceed that rested atop his head gave a nod of understanding as they descended the staircase to the bottom floor of the spy members who were tasked with overseeing this specific floor of the castle looked up at their leaders and gave a respectful bow to them. One of the members, a young woman named Sue, then ran up and walked behind her superiors as they headed for the doors of the castle. Sue was a short, dark-skinned woman with short green hair and brown eyes. She wore a navy blue shirt with torn sleeves and long green pants with a black belt wrapped around her waist. Her outfit was completed with a pair of dark brown boots. "Fujin-sama, Myobu-sama, is there something wrong?" Sue asked. "Fujin and I will be stepping out for a moment, but relay a message to the team we have stationed to act undercover within the Magic Council and tell them to look up any information they can within the archives regarding this woman." Kurama tossed the photo lacrima to the green-haired woman. Sue, unprepared for the toss, juggled the lacrima around in her hands for a moment before getting a firm grip on it. "Yes, Myobu-sama." Sue nodded stiffly before going off to do her task. As Sue left them, the 2 exited through the castle doors and as soon as they were a suitable distance from the architectural marvel, Kurama leapt off of Naruto's head and Naruto, raising up the hood of his cloak to cover his head, kicked off of the ground. Both SS-class level beings took off through the skies to head for a Caliphate town. A Caliphate town, Fury, Achoo. Yugito wiped her nose as she sneezed. I wonder who's thinking about me. I hope it's Ul-chan, at least that way I know she cares. Yugito-chan, you know very well that Ul-chan cares very much about you. She just has a very unique way of expressing herself. Matabi told the twin sister of Ultir. Yugito ni Milkovich pivoted on the chair she sat in and rose up from her seat. She turned to the bartender and smiled sweetly at him. "Thanks for the booze, Tiger." She winked at him before placing down a jewel on the counter. The bartender nodded to the blonde as he took her money, holding it up to the light to assure it was not a fake form of payment. As Yugito walked towards the doors that led to the outside of the bar, but as she was passing by a table, one of said table's occupants made a daring move and went to pat her on her shapely ass. However, before he could even make contact with his target, the hand of the young woman reached out and grabbed the burly man's wrist. The man's eyes widened as he felt the woman's strong grip. Despite his muscular frame, the strong-looking man was soon brought to his knees before all the people that had turned to watch the scene. Now, big boy, if you wanted to get to this." She patted her ass, much to the delight of the male viewers and a few female ones. "You first had to get through that. NYA." She pointed in the air and all watchers looked up to see Matabi hovering in the air. Before anyone could even make a joke about how a little kitty cat wouldn't be able to do anything, The dichromatic feline held out her paw and a red-orange spheroid of flame came to life, hovering over the paw. "That's right, boys. You want her? You deal with me first. So, anyone?" All male viewers and the few females, all quickly averted their attention away from the woman and cat duo. With a nod of satisfaction, Matabi extinguished her fireball and Yugito turned back to face her would-be assaulter. "The kitty's got claws, NYA." Yugito held up her free hand and the man's eyes widened as he saw the girl's nails lengthen of her own free will, turning into sharp claws that looked like they could tear flesh from bone. "I'll show you just how sharp these claws can be, but I prefer not to cause any trouble today, NYA." The man released a sigh of relief as he saw her retract her claws, but his sigh became a high-pitched squeak when a foot found its way to his testicular region. "But let that be your warning, okay, tiger." She patted the side of the man's face lightly before walking away with a sway in her hips. Yugito and Matabi left the bar, throwing open the door quite forcefully and returned to the streets of a Califa town. The feline curiosity that both female figures possessed forced them to constantly glance at all the merchant carts that passed through the town. As this happened, Matabi chose to strike up a conversation. "So, Yugito-chan? Ever since that little escapade with Gildarts, it seems we lost the Ogono Fujins and my brother's trails. Even though we got to Magnolia Town after the Phantom Lord Guild War incident that people talked about, it appears that they have eluded our paths yet again. I can't get Kurama ni-san's scent since they had gotten away far too quickly for us to follow after them ruined the flow of the and their scents got mixed up due to the rain spells that occurred over the past 3 months and not to mention that if we were to tell Ul-chan about this she'd blow a gasket," Matabi said. "Nya, Imoudo-chan wouldn't like how we lost track of him like that. However, there's nothing we can do and it's not like they're just gonna drop out of the sky or something." Unknowingly to both the daughter of Ul and the blue-furred exceed, as Yugito said that, Naruto and Kurama dropped out of the sky and landed on the rooftops of the houses that were spread out across the small town. A Califa town is relatively small town so finding our targets should not be seen as too difficult. "Kurama, do you know the scent of your sister?" the Apocalypse Dragonslayer asked. "I haven't seen each other in so many years. I have long since forgotten the scents of my siblings. When we met Fu and Chome, that was actually the first time I saw ever since we arrived here in Earthland from Edalis. We had gotten split up when the Anima portal dropped us off," Kurama replied. The Dragonslayer tapped his cheek and thought. "I have an idea, and what would that be, Naruto?" "Exceeds are cats in their own right, but is there a distinguishing feature in your sense that would set you apart from regular felines?" "No, the only difference that sets us apart from any other feline is that we have the ability to generate magic. And the fact that we can sprout wings and fly, but that's pretty much it," Kurama said with a shrug. Naruto nodded before retrieving his magic pen from his personal pocket dimension. He began to draw a circle of kanji on the tiles of the roof that he and Kurama were on. When the seal array was complete, the blonde tapped the center of the seal array with his right index finger. Seal magic. Echolation. A feeling akin to that of rushing wind flew forth from the seal array. The spell required a minimal amount of magic energy. The seal would funnel the energy through its links and unleash it in the form of a relatively weak magic pulse that expanded over a variable range, said range being directly proportional to the amount of magic being applied. The spell would act in a similar way to how dolphin would use echolation to find food. The magic pulse would pick up on any individuals that were capable of using magic energy before returning to the seal. The drawback was that it only gave the location of the individuals and wasn't a very specific method since it did not work to give a measurement of the magic levels located. Kurama and Naruto watched the seal for a few moments before the rushing feeling came back, retreating back into the seal array. A few tiny red dots appeared on the violet magic seal. The two blips in the center of the array represent Naruto and Kurama themselves. Surrounding them were a few more red dots, but only one area of the magic seal showed a pair of those dots. There, Kurama pointed at the pair of dots with his fox-like tail. Directly northeast of us and they seemed to be relatively close too. "Let's go." Naruto rose up to his feet, canceling the seal before he and Kurama took off in the direction the seal had shown them. They flew over the town and looked every which way for the pair they were looking for. Kurama's crimson eyes then widened as he caught a flicker of blue beneath him. "There," he stated as he flapped his wings slowly to keep himself stationary in the air. Naruto hovered next the fox-costumed feline and followed his partner's gaze before spotting the blue-furred exceed and the blonde-haired woman who were walking alongside the merchant carts that were passing through the town. "So how do you propose we go about this?" Naruto asked. "You're asking me?" Kurama replied, raising a non-existent eyebrow. "Well, Matabi is your sibling and thus it would be logical for you to give the directions in our approach." "True." Kurama swished his tail back and forth and thought. "We don't want to jump them and catch them too off guard, otherwise it may lead to unnecessary conflict between us. Not to mention Matabi-chan does get very violent when caught by surprise. Such a cute kitten, that girl." Naruto turned to Kurama as he watched the nostalgic look appear on the crimson-eyed feline's face. So the plan would be to simply approach and ask if we can have a discussion with them? Naruto deadpanned. Yeah, pretty much. Naruto sighed, planting his face into his palms, but he complied with his partner's advice. So with that, the two dropped down from the skies and landed a suitable distance on the dirt roads from their targets. Naruto's hooded form approached Yugito and Matabi, Kurama resting on his usual place atop the head of his partner. When the four neared each other, they all came to a stop. Matabi and Yugito gave the hooded man an odd look since he just chose to stop abruptly in front of them for no apparent reason. However, Matabi's eyes widened when her differently colored eyes rested on the exceed atop the man's head. Those blood-colored eyes. The fox costume. It could only be one being in her mind that would be present in that attire and have such piercing eyes. Kurama ni-san, Matabi-chan. Long time no see. Kurama raised a paw lazily and grinned at his little sister. Matabi. You called that cat Kurama ni-san. Does that mean? Matabi nodded. Yugito's dark eyes narrowed as she looked at the black-cloaked man in front of her. Matabi and companion, my partner and I would like to have a word with you. Yugito bit her lip. Here she was looking for the very man and fox that she and her feline companion were supposed to be tailing discreetly, and suddenly the very same people they had lost ended up coming to them and wishing to engage in discussion with them. Fuck. Yugito-chan, come on. Matabi instructed her. Yugito pulled the blue-furred feline aside and whispered harshly in her ear. Matabi, you can't be serious, she hissed. Altair specifically asked for us to help her keep tabs on them, so what better way to do that than to actually learn about them from their own mouths? I haven't forgotten our task from Ul-chan, but after so many years I finally get to see my big brother. I'm not going to pass up the opportunity, even if he and his partner are SS-class mage criminals. Matabi's hushed tone was equally harsh tone. Yugito and Matabi glared at each other, but eventually Yugito gave in. They turned around and gave a nod to the obscured Naruto and the visible Kurama. Very well, Yugito said. Where would you like to have your discussion? We will take you both back to headquarters, Kurama told the blonde-haired woman before patting Naruto's hood-covered head. I'm not going to hurt you, Naruto said as he raised his hands, seeing that both females flinched at his action. He won't. Trust me on this, Matabi-chan. Matabi looked at her brother before turning to Yugito and nodding. Naruto placed his hands on their heads. Futon. Shunpo no Kazejin. The four then vanished in a swirl of wind. Spy Network HQ, Eastern Fiorian Mountains. Fury, Yugito and Matabi shook their heads to get rid of the nausea they felt from being transported at high speeds through the air in the time frame of an hour. You could have at least warned us of you doing that, Fujin Nya. Naruto didn't respond as he and Kurama led them to entrance of the castle. Yugito and Matabi stood in awe before the large piece of infrastructure. We've been living in the ice and snow in your mother's cottage and Kurama ni-san was basking in this. Yugito-chan, I'm thinking that criminal life tends to have its perks. The Hellfire using Exceed said. No shit. They live in a fucking castle. The two then stopped as they watched Naruto and Kurama knock on the large wooden doors of their humble abode. The two females looked at each other and then at their hosts in confusion. The sound of approaching footsteps were heard behind the door. The door's large form began to shift, but then Yugito and Matabi's eyes widened when they saw Naruto take a step back before kicking the large door in like it were a regular door. The door swung inwards and the two then sweat dropped as they saw the poor victim of Naruto's door kick slamming harshly against the far-off stone wall. The man who had been struck then fell off the wall and the sweat drops of Yugito's and Matabi's heads grew larger when they saw the imprint the man had made, and judging from its depth, they could tell that this was a regular occurrence. Fujin-sama, why must you do this to me? The man, whom Naruto and Kurama had learned to be named Ash, whined as anime tears began streaming from his eyes. Your pain amuses me. The blonde spoke and threw off his hood and adjusted his face mask. The four entered the castle. The two newcomers glanced around of the castle's first floor. Wow, was all the two females could utter as they looked around. The sound of approaching footsteps caused the four to turn to the side and look at the source of those footsteps. Sue stopped just in front of her two superiors and bowed respectfully to them. Fujin-sama, Myobu-sama, the team in Akalifa town has sent a message saying that the two targets we reported to you about have been taken by a hooded individual who happens to look like. Sue's dialogue slowed down as she glanced down at the photolachroma in her hand, looking over the holographic image in her hand. She finished her dialogue. A sweat drop formed along a nervous scratching of the back of her head. She then looked behind Naruto and Kurama to see Yugito and Matabi watching her with a bland look on their faces. Oh, well, this is embarrassing. Not at all, Kurama said. Yes, you all are just adhering to my instructions. It's quite assuring to see that you all are taking my instructions with such seriousness, but as you can see, the targets are in our custody, so there is no need to worry. Now, while I discuss some things here with these two, tell the others that they are welcome to take their lunch breaks, but tell them to keep alert. A spy network does not leave its main base of operations unattended. After all, you are my second in command for the time being. I'm your second in command, Sue asked with surprise as she pointed at herself. For the time being, I said. Besides, I thought we established that since you are the one I usually speak to when it comes to HQ status, Naruto said. He does have a point, Kurama added. Sue gulped before bowing to the blonde Dragonslayer and red-furred exceed. Then I will not let you down, Fujin-sama, Myobu-sama, Sue exclaimed. I know you won't. You are our subordinates after all, Naruto said with a pat on the girl's shoulder. Sue then ran off, the giddy look on her face not escaping the two SS-class criminals. Yugito and Matabi then followed Naruto and Kurama up the stairs. Naruto then sat in his cushy obsidian throne while Kurama sat on his miniature version of Pillow-chan, the red velvet pillow. Both were capable of overseeing everything on the lower portion of the first floor, but as of now, their attention was focused on Matabi and Yugito, who were left standing as they watched the two males in front of them. So what is it that you wish to discuss, Fujin Nya? Yugito asked. Well, truthfully, I had no intention of looking for you. Kurama here decided to bring you all to the castle because he finally was able to reunite himself with your own Exceed companion, Matabi. However, because of the fact that you have an Exceed partner, it has led us both to come to a hypothesis that I would very much like you to confirm. And what would said hypothesis be? Matabi asked. In all my travels, there has been quite a bit of a constant in this land of ours. Dragon slayers, mages who have the abilities to slay dragons through the use of their magic which bears an affinity to a certain element. They usually tend to have Exceeds as their partners. Seeing as you have Matabi, I would like to know which dragon it was that raised you, if you are indeed a dragon slayer. Naruto said. She does not have a scent of a dragon slayer. She is most likely not a dragon slayer, but I was capable of obscuring my own dragon slayer identity from Haku when I first met her, so there is always that idea to take into consideration. Also, she could also lie, but I have been educated in the art of lying to the point that I can easily tell if someone is committing the act. Sorry to disappoint you both, but I am not a dragon slayer. I understand where you are coming from as they say that the salamander of fairy tale has an Exceed as companion, but I am not a dragon slayer, Yugito said as she crossed her arms beneath her chest. Though with that in mind, are you a dragon slayer? Information is power, Yugito-san. You will not find answers to many questions from me, Naruto responded bluntly. Yugito frowned. Even if he is wearing that face mask his eyes would betray him, but I'm looking at them directly and he is firm in his responses. He knows the game it seems. Well then Fujin Nya, let's see how well you can play. Yugito sported a playful smirk at her fellow blonde who replied with a challenging look in his eyes. You won't get anything out of me that easily, you mangy woman. While the two humans were staring at each other, trying to figure each other out, Kurama and Matabi engaged in conversation through the mental link that only the 9 siblings shared. So Matabi-chan, what have you been up to? I hadn't seen you since that day. Kurama thought to her. Matabi frowned and nodded. I missed you and the others as well, Kurama-ni-san. After that day I wandered through Earthland. Unlike you, I landed in the icy tundra that lay in the northern mountains of Fury. If it weren't for fire affinity I would surely have died out there, but I pushed through. Eventually I came across Yugito-chan and her mother, as in the ice mage who was killed by Deliora? That and the girl here is her daughter? Kurama gained a look of interest in his crimson eyes. This mental conversation just got very interesting. Matabi nodded to her brother. The very same. So when died from using the spell-iced shell, I took over to raise Yugito. I've been her best friend and confidant and she was mine. You care very much for the human, don't you? Kurama asked. Matabi chuckled. As if you don't care for yours as well. I see that look of respect you give to the Ogo no Fujin. Leave it to you to find a kindred spirit in the only SS-class criminal to emerge in Fury in years. Kurama rolled his eyes at his little sister. You're still an annoying little kitten, you know that? You know you love me. True, but I'm still not afraid to kick your ass for back talking to your Oni-sama. A period of silence passed between the two after they shared the laugh at Kurama's joking threat. So, Ni-san, have you seen the others? Matabi asked. Kurama nodded and this earned a look of shock from the female Exceed. Really? Yes. I met Chome. She's the same hyperactive girl we all know, but she has calmed down a bit after meeting her Dragonslayer partner, Fu. Actually, Fu and Chome are members of our little club and since you're here it can be possible for us to call her in so she can meet you. Kurama smiled toothily at his other little sister. However, Kakuo has joined up with a Rune Knight, the head captain nonetheless, Han. Kokuo's in the Rune Knights? Matabi had surprised look on her face. Yes, and so I was forced to fight him back because he and Han were given orders to arrest myself and the Fujin. Matabi frowned at that. Don't worry, he's still alive. I would never kill my own kin. Just badly damage them. Matabi's sweat dropped at that. Ni-san, you idiot. So what about you? Matabi blinked in confusion. Have you met any of our other siblings other than me? I've met Shukaku actually, insane and lecherous as always. Kurama and Matabi sighed as they thought about the youngest of their group of 9. It's good to see that you're safe, Matabi-chan. You too, Kurama-ni-san. The two exceeds then turned to their partners when they realized just how tense the atmosphere seemed to be. A few moments passed as Naruto and Yugito narrowed their eyes at each other. So, Naruto broke the silence. Yugito-san, where are you from? Yugito didn't even flinch as she responded quickly and firmly, north. Must be dreadfully cold there I presume. You wouldn't believe. How about you? We were traveling too fast to get a good look. The mountains. A suitable area wouldn't you say? I would. Yugito agreed with the blonde-haired man. So tell me, Fujin Nya. I heard you were the one to take down Jose Porla and effectively kill him. Is that true? Yes, he answered with a curt nod. Yuge hardened look in his eyes but she didn't show it. So, Fujin Nya. You must be terribly lonely up here in this castle. A king with no queen. You must have quite a bit of pent-up stress, don't you? Yugito spoke with a seductive look on her face as she walked up to the young man. Naruto raised an eyebrow at her. Excuse me? Oh, don't be like that, Fujin Nya. She placed her hand on the young man's thigh and ran in up oh so slowly up the length of it, stopping just before his crotch before going back down. I know you've been watching me. I'd say it would be the other way around since you seem to know more of my escapades than I do of yours, Yugito-san. Naruto replied. It's quite hard not to. You show up in quite a bit of media and all this popularity. It does get to a man, doesn't it? I wouldn't know, but I would assume it would. However, I have no trouble. Yugito's sweet smile twitched ever so slightly. Damn it, is he gay or something? He's not even responding to having my breasts in his face. Meanwhile, in Naruto's mind the blonde was reciting his mantra. Don't have a nosebleed, don't have a nosebleed, don't have a nosebleed. He made sure to keep his eyes focused on the dark-eyed woman's brief face. You really do seem tense though, Fujin Nya. You know I am very skilled at making stress disappear. She purred like a cat as she said this. She leaned forward as she did this and the golden wind god glanced to the side, following her face to make sure he wouldn't lose the makeshift game that was occurring. Tempting, but what would you expect in exchange? Yugito smirked. She had him. All of this can be yours. She gestured to herself, moving her hand from her head to her toes, and smiled at him. If you just tell me about your little vanishing act 3 months ago. Nay, Fujin Nya. She said the name of his title in a slow manner, uttering each syllable for emphasis. Naruto's blue eyes widened at that and he would have actually responded had he not picked up on something. His nose twitched as he took in her scent due to her close proximity. He hadn't taken it on before, but the scent was eerily familiar. The perfume was rather sweet and his sensory organ worked in overdrive as it worked in tandem with his brain to pull out the memory that made him wonder why the scent was so familiar. And then it clicked. His eyes widened as he looked directly into Yugito's eyes. I knew your scent was familiar, he said. Yugito backed away at that statement. Alright big boy, I don't know how you know how I smell because that is just weird as fuck. How the hell would you know how I smell? We never met before, she said, in person that is. Naruto ignored his fellow blonde's words as he remembered the scent and the memory that came with it. Flashback. Minerva smiled at the young man. I will help you if it means that much to you. After all, it's not every day I see the young man who saw himself as nothing like a human suddenly regain a bit of his humanity. Naruto's emotionless gaze gained its second wind and he growled at the woman. Do not refer to me as one of your species. You may see me as one of your own, but I am nothing like your kind. Naruto said as he sat back down in his chair. Minerva nodded, but she paused when she heard a faint meow. Naruto and Minerva both went to look beneath the librarian's desk and the old woman smiled when she pulled out a white, blonde striped cat. Its deep black eyes showing such innocence. It licked Minerva's cheek before meowing again. Well, aren't you the sweetest little thing? Minerva smiled. But I'm afraid I can't let you stay here no matter how adorable you look. Naruto rolled his eyes as the elderly woman spoke to the cat before grabbing it roughly, causing the feline to hiss as its fur was gripped rather harshly. Move it, you disgusting furball. Naruto growled, causing the cat to shrink away in fear as it watched the cold blue eyes of the Apocalypse Dragonslayer. Naruto opened the door, but paused just as he was about to throw out the cat. His high sense of smell caught something odd about the feline in his hands and he sniffed it. The cat gained a curious, but seemingly frightened look, as the human holding it began to sniff it. Naruto blinked. Strange. For some reason it smells like perfume. Probably one of those cats raised by those high-class human snobs. The cat meowed and gave Naruto a hesitant lick on the cheek. Naruto's eyes narrowed as he wiped the saliva from his face. He gripped the cat tightly and lightly tossed the cat outside. The cat hissed once more as soon as it hit the ground, only for Naruto to send a small wind bullet its way, causing it to go flying before it ran away with fright. End flashback. You were that cat. Oh shit. Yugito's eyes widened by a fraction. You were that cat. You were spying on me. Yugito suddenly found herself with her neck caught in the young man's grasp before she could even react. Yugito. Matabi suddenly became engulfed in flames and became a giant cat the size of a horse made entirely of blue and black flames. She leapt at Naruto, but she suddenly herself pulled down to the ground and a hand like forepaw had itself wrapped around her throat. Stand down, Matabi-chan. Do not make me hurt you, Kurama said with a soft look in his eyes. The red-furred feline was also in his beast form, his three tails swishing behind him slowly. Matabi could only watch with disbelief. Kurama ni. How did you? Yugito gasped and sputtered as the Dragonslayer's hold tightened around her trachea. Naruto's piercing blue eyes fixated on her struggling form. A fierce look that a dragon would give to its prey burned within his sapphire orbs. The snarl wasn't visible beneath his face mask, but Yugito could see the points of his sharp canines protruding against the fabric of the face mask. He then slackened his grip to allow her room to breathe, but still tight enough to have her know he could snap her neck at any given time. You seem quite familiar though. You look very similar to a young woman I met a while back. She was a member of Grimoire Heart, but she had dark hair and she'd paler than you. She was a pretty little thing. I think I nearly killed her on 2 accounts. Yugito's eyes widened and Naruto's eyes widened as well, though it was more of a mock surprise. Oh, so you know her? Well, little kitty cat. Tell me, who is she? One of the hands that held Naruto's wrist raised up and the middle finger faced skyward. Naruto chuckled. You are indeed a fighter, I will respect that. But know that I can tear you to shreds right now if I wanted to. He snarled as killing intent oozed from his body and flowed towards Yugito. The attractive blonde woman bared her own sharpened teeth and met his killing intent with her own. You show great care for this woman and you also look very much like her. A relative of yours? A cousin? Naruto guessed, but then shook his head. Oh no, the type of loyalty you show for this Grimoire Heart member runs much deeper than what one would show a cousin. You are her sister. What amazing deductive abilities. Just what is this man? To be able to determine Yugito's relations to All-chan by merely looking at her. Matabi watched up at her best friend, her grounded form still held back by Kurama's three-tailed fox mode. Tell me who that woman is. Who is she? Naruto's eyes widened when he felt a spark of magic energy. Take over. Saber-toothed tiger. Naruto released his captive when he saw her transform into the large form of a saber-toothed tiger. Its muscular, fur-covered form snarled at him and Naruto seemed to give a look of approval to the young woman's abilities. Interesting. So you are a user of takeover magic. Quite an interesting woman you are. Yugito snarled and leapt, her massive brown form aiming to tear him to shreds for bringing up Ultir. However, her eyes widened when she found her body void of air. Naruto's fist sunk itself deeply into her stomach before he twisted and smashed his heel against her grounded form skull. Yu roared and increased her size, but Kurama did the same and this time, he added his 3 tails to the mix and bound her limbs and muzzle. You will not move. Runt. Matabi flinched at the tone her older brother used on her. Despite her fire abilities being greater than his own, Kurama was always the strongest of them all and even if she were to take him on, she would sorely lose. Not to mention she was bound and stuck to the ground by her brother's heavier form. Despite the kitsune being lean, he was very good in weight distribution in order to take down his opponents when he aimed to hold them. Claws traced the saber-toothed feline's neck and Yugito gulped when she felt the sharp tips make contact with her flesh. Stand down, he ordered. Yugito snarled at the young man, but her eyes widened when she watched his sapphire orbs suddenly become a bright image of a mighty black dragon appeared in her mind's eye, its large form roaring and lashing out wildly as it tore the land asunder. What are you? Yugito asked as she reverted back to human form, the fear suddenly causing her to lose her focus on her transformation. I am destruction incarnate and if you do not wish for destruction to come upon you, I suggest you answer me, girl. If I were to tell you, you just kill her. Grimoire Heart was once trying to recruit you and I heard of how you took down Zankro and Azuma. I will not let you get to my sister. Not my Udo. Yugito said with a harsh glare. Naruto sighed as he looked Yugito in the eyes once more. Her defiance was paramount. You must really care for your sister. She's all I have left and if you think I'd reveal the location of Grimoire Heart and the name of my Udo to you of all people then you can just take your expectations and shove it up your asshole. Naruto's eye twitched at the woman's response, but given her situation and who she was protecting it was an understandable reaction. Family and nakama are people that are being treasures. I commend you for your selfless act of protecting your sister. Yugito suddenly felt the pressure around her that was caused by Naruto's killing intent, vanish. Go. He dropped her down on the ground. Yugito coughed lightly. She no longer felt constricted in any way. She watched her captor with wide eyes. What? I said you may go. Leave my castle and take Matabi with you. But you could easily have me tortured and extract the information from me. A man of your status and power shouldn't be beyond that. I could do that, but the end result may have you in a state that would enrage your companion. Kurama told me of Matabi's power over fire and how it possibly exceeds his own. Your enraged companion would cause the destruction of my HQ. Rob me of resources. I worked quite a bit of time to achieve en masse, and in the end I will have to probably kill her to put her down, and that would then result in Kurama to betray me, and well. Last time he and I went all out against each other, it wasn't a pretty sight. Kurama remained silent and Matabi remained still beneath her much stronger brother. Kurama, let your sister go. Kurama looked down at his little sister and nuzzled her flaming form. His resistance to fire made him feel no pain as he did so. He released his sister and the flaming cat watched her brother as she rose to her feet. Nisan. I wanted to tell you, but I made an obligation to Yugito-chan's sister to help her by tailing you both. Matabi. Kurama looked at his sister with an icy glare. Get out. Nisan. Now. Matabi gulped and slunk away from her older brother whose glare continued to follow her. Matabi reverted back into her exceed form and sprouted her wings with her era magic before hovering in the air beside Yugito. Yugito gulped as she watched the two SS-class criminals take their respective seats once more. Naruto on his obsidian throne and Kurama on his red velvet and Matabi raced down the steps and out the doors of the castle, not even sparing a glance behind them. Yugito quickly dropped down on all fours. Take over. Cheetah. The young woman's form stretched out and elongated as magic energy flowed over her body. Matabi flapped her wings even faster as she raced alongside the human-turned feline. Going from 0 to 100 in 2 seconds, the two felines raced through the forests of the eastern Fiorian mountains. Yugito-chan, we have to tell Ul-chan. I know, we can't have her pursue this man any longer. They say you should not wake the sleeping dragon. And that man. That monster. He is a sleeping dragon that should not be woken up. Yugito spoke through her cheetah form's mouth. We need to contact Ultir as soon as possible. We'll return home in the north. He won't find us there. Even if I did tell him we lived north, he won't be able to find us. The blizzards will mask our scent. Matabi nodded and the two took off and raced through the mountainous regions of Fiori to head north. You placed a tracking seal on her, didn't you? Kurama asked as he glanced at Naruto. Kurama became encompassed in a red glow and reverted back to his exceed form. And if I did? Naruto asked in return. They were following us for quite a while it seems. Ever since we became known as the Onibi Myobu and Ogo no Fujin, they had made it their mission to monitor us it seems. That would seem to be the case, Kurama. Suddenly, Su and 4 other subordinates appeared in a flash of light via Naruto's own teleportation seals. Fujin-sama, we witnessed the entire scene from the technical center through the vision lacrima we have stationed throughout the castle. Are you alright? Yes, I am fine. Would you like us to pursue the girl and her beast, Fujin-sama? Asked a young, light-skinned, bald man. His deep gray eyes filled with commitment to take down the beast that dared attack his spy network commander. Mind your tongue, Alexander. Kurama snarled. That beast happens to be my younger sibling. Alexander gulped as he nodded in understanding. My apologies, Myobu-sama. He bowed deeply to the kitsune. And to answer your question, no, do not pursue. Now you may leave. Kurama ordered. Su, Alexander and the 2 other subordinates bowed before leaving their head commanders to their own devices. Kurama then turned to Naruto with a slightly perplexed look. Technical center? Where did you find the space and the technology to construct that? The kitsune costume cat asked. You really think I can run a spy network without a technologically advanced base of operations? Besides, I have Dusan's jewel and precious stone to act as my own personal bank. Dragons hoard quite a bit of things, Kurama. As for space, this castle is actually much bigger than one would think. Even if it does seem large enough, Jose Porla never realized just how much he could have done with an area as large as this castle. I simply made use of the space. Kurama nodded in understanding. Are you alright? Naruto asked as he petted the Exceed's head. Kurama snorted. Showing concern are we? For you, never. But for my partner, yes, I would show concern for him. Naruto admitted. Kurama chuckled as he melted into Naruto's hand when the young man scratched behind his ears. Are you alright knowing that your own sibling had been working with Grimoire Heart? She was not with them. She is obligated to work with Yugito and Yugito is sworn to help her sister in any way she can. Familial bonds have quite a bit of power over people and it's good to see you finally understand that. What makes you think that You can't hide anything from your partner, Naruto. Kurama smirked. Also, you talk loud enough for me to hear when you go into the seal to talk with Minato and Kushina. Naruto rolled his eyes, but a smirk found its way to his face as well. However, the little moment of friendship building was over as Naruto felt a pulse of magic reached into his cloak and took out the communication seal he had in order to listen to any information that his subordinates would have to personally tell him. Speak. Nia's tone and an equally serious expression on his face. Fujin-sama. Yes, Fujin-sama. This is Captain Mozart of the undercover team you set to act as your contacts within the new Magic Council. Mozart, you do know that this is my own personal seal. I only issued it for emergency contacts alone, so please make sure that what you are about to say is important or you will find yourself back here and with your throat slit. Like I told you all in the beginning, you do your jobs and I won't rip your throats out. Naruto heard Mozart gulp audibly before he spoke. Why yes, Fujin-sama. This is information I would believe is important enough though. Well, to lead up to that, I will have to do a recap for you. Mozart fumbled with his words as he could feel the annoyance that Naruto was feeling. Of course, you remember that 1 month after you took control of our former guild of Phantom Lord and made it into your own personal spy network, which I am so very thankful for by the way, the Magic Council found out about the betrayal of their council members Seagrain and Ultir Milkovich who had secretly been working on the Tower of Heaven, aka, the R system. Yes. I was actually quite surprised that such a construction attempt had happened beneath the Magic Council's noses for so long. You all had done very well to relay that information to me. That was the day that I had chosen to promote you to your status as a captain of your team, Mozart. The Magic Council had been forced to rebuild itself if I am not mistaken. Yes, Fujin-sama, that very same day. I thank you for promoting me once more, and yes, the Magic Council had been forced to rebuild itself from the ground up. Well, it appears that some new members have been added into the council itself. Not much is known about a lot of these new members as they chose to keep their files completely disclosed to anyone of non-councilman status, but I had managed to get the name of the new chairman. His name is Grand Doma and he has shifted and/or replaced laws for the mage community. One law in particular is that the killing of mages has been allowed, but only if that mage is a member of a dark guild or if that mage is on the bounty list. So I am afraid that you and Myobu-sama are still recognized as SS-class criminals. Mozart explained. I see. Well, that does certainly catch my attention. Pardon my interruption, Fujin-sama, but I actually have another piece of information that my second-in-command, Michelle, found while she was helping reload the Magic Council's archives into the central database. Go on. Fujin-sama, it appears that a few years ago, during the year X767, an investigation has been conducted in the savage lands which lay beyond the Pengrande Kingdom. They had found dragon remains, Fujin-sama. Mozart said with a troubled tone in his voice. Dragon remains? Impossible. As one of your captains, I know you trusted me with the information regarding that you are in fact a Dragonslayer, and let me inform you that I have not told anyone in my team. Not even Michelle-san. Now to continue from where I left off. It appears that their investigation of the dragon remains proved to be pretty much a bust since all they found were a few scales among the bones. But back then, before it was destroyed in X770 for reasons the archives do not display, they had managed to work on an experiment involving the scales of the dragons they found. What was this experiment? Mozart paused, probably looking over the information Michelle had sent him. Oh, here it is. Quoting from the file itself, Fujin-sama, year X767. Our investigation was thought to be ruined, but in actuality it was a success. The dragon scales we had found in the savage lands proved to actually have large amount of magic stored within them as if they were battery cell. This could actually explain how dragons were able to be so durable in battle, but enough about that. The experiment my team and I will conduct is no doubt going to change the world of magic and turn it upside down. Due to the fact that the dragon scales themselves have been shown to store magic within them, we came up with the idea to channel its power and use it to replicate the powers of a dragon. No, Naruto's free hand clenched the arm of his throne. No longer will they be a rare occurrence ranging within only the tens in terms of population size. Dragonslayers will finally be able to be manufactured. The war capabilities are endless. A lacrima will be used to act as the medium and it will be able to make a complete connection, a symbiotic attachment, to the target, allowing the powers of a dragon to meld with the person's magic circulatory system. A new generation of Dragonslayer has been born. We shall call them the second generation Dragonslayers. No, Naruto roared, his eyes flickering white. Kurama's head snapped up as he looked at his enraged partner. Naruto's hand clenched tighter as he continued to listen to Mozart speak to him. Replication of a dragon's power? That is absurd. It is absolutely fucking possible. Who is the leader of this experiment? Who are the test subjects? Mozart, give me those names now. Naruto, what's wrong? What's this talk about replicating a dragon's powers? Kurama asked. Mozart, the guy we promoted to captain in the Magic Council team? Naruto nodded to the Exceed. Yes, he just told me that the Magic Council, back when the Bureau of Magic Development was still in an activated state, they constructed a lacrima, a synthetic method of granting a person the powers of a Dragonslayer. I am impossible. Dragonslayers can only be created through the teachings of a dragon to a human. Let me in on this conversation. Naruto nodded and Kurama flew up to the side of Naruto's head and reached out with his paw and touched the communication seal. Captain Mozart, this is the Onibi Myobu. Is this true? Has the Magic Council really made a way to manufacture a Dragonslayer? Yes, Myobu-sama, But the project was destroyed in the end since some test subjects began to die from magic energy overload when they bonded to the dragon lacrimas. Mozart, those names. Do you have them? Mozart's voice trembled as he heard the raging thought voice of his commander. Why yes. F. Fujin-sama. They have no name for the leader of the experiment, sir. His name has been blacked out and so I cannot read it. Naruto growled, clenching his throne's arm in rage. And what are the test subjects? Who are they? There is one B by the name of Cobra. The little shit from Oracion sees. Are there any others? There is only one other successful experiment, Fujin-sama, and his name is… Oh my, Michelle. Yes, Captain Mozart? A woman's voice entered Naruto's and Kurama's thoughts through the communication seal. Am I reading this correctly? Is this person really a result of this experiment as well? Yes, Captain. Everything you see there is an exact recording of the second General Dragonslayer project. Mozart, Kurama roared. Who the hell is it? Naruto's voice echoed into the seal's communication link. Fujin-sama. The other second-generation Dragonslayer is Laxus. Laxus Drayar of Fairy Tale. The Ogono Fujin and Onibi Myobu stared at the sealed tag and said Wind God's hand with looks of utter disbelief. They then looked at each other and then back at the seal. What?